Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is Wednesday, September 17th, 2021. This is the State Board of Education, and we are in person today at Montpelier High School. So let me just start with the call to order.
Mohammed Job.
Here.
Cynthia Stewart.
Here.
Brian Campion.
Here.
Richard Werner.
Here.
Tammy Colby. Here. Caleb Greenwood.
Here.
Lyle Jepson.
Here.
Tom Lovett. Secretary Saunders.
Here.
Brianna Marsh. And Chair Samuelson.
Here, thank you. All right, so I just want to take a moment. We started our day early. We had a tour of Montpelier High School with two phenomenal students. I want to thank Milo and Lucia, who are no longer here with us, but they did spend an hour with the board earlier today and really helped us to see everything that's going on at the school. And I was really impressed by how much gets packed into a very small space. So thank you. And also want to thank Superintendent Bonesteel for being with us here today and joining us on the tour and at lunch. And lunch was really delicious. So thank you for your hospitality. Did you want to add anything or?
No. I just say welcome to Montpelier High School and Montpelier Roxbury Public Schools. We're super excited to show off some things for you all today. So students and teachers coming in a little bit, but I'll let you guys get together and get going on your meeting as well.
Thank you. Okay, before we get started, are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none. Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard? I don't see anyone in the audience in person. If there's anyone online who wishes to be heard, you can raise your hand icon.
It's hard to see.
I know. All right, I'm not seeing anyone. We'll leave this open for a couple of minutes. All right, well, that takes us to a motion to approve the State Board of Education draft meeting minutes from our August 20th, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion?
I will move that under the floor.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
All right, second by Cammy. Any discussion? I do have some edits that I just caught when I was reading through. So on page 7, under Mount Mansfield Academy, there was a T missing under Mount Mansfield. And I'd like to change the third to last sentence to read where it starts, and that 25% of the students, I think we need to add in the 2023-2024 school year, needed to be publicly funded for a school to qualify for public tuition under the new guidelines, just so that we're clear that that's the standard by which the schools are being judged. That was my first comment. Second comment, under Maple Street School, which is on page 8, I propose changing the third sentence to read, it's the sentence that starts with, the school satisfies the requirements that, and then add in, as of the 2023-2024 school year, and then continue on, at least 25% of the student body received public tuition. And then finally, on page 9, under the paragraph beginning with Lori Dolezal, I'd like to change the second to last sentence to read where it says, and the schools that are ineligible to receive public funding, add in, pursuant to Act 73 for newly admitted students, and then continue on, will be moved to the end of the list. Does anyone have any objections to those? Okay. With those amendments for the motion, corrections for the motion and the second, are we ready for the vote? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes of our August 20th, 2025 meeting with those amendments, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay. So, board announcements. Tom will be joining us late today. He was teaching a class and then driving over. And I heard from Brianna last night that she actually was leaving her school early today to attend a sports activity And given our late start, it didn't really make sense for her to come. So we will look forward to being in person with her next month. Also, in your agenda packet, you have the final order regarding the Inspire School. So this closes the matter. I don't know if there are any questions about that. But I want to thank Adam Powers, who is serving as the hearing officer, for leading the parties through that. I don't think we put Adam to work as much as we envisioned, but he really did help the board out, and I just want to thank him a lot for his work. And then my other announcement is that Tammy and I did conduct interviews last month for having an attorney on retainer. We are in the final stages of that and expect to have someone joining us within the next few weeks. Any other board announcements? All right.
Unless you want me to talk about robotics, but I'll stop.
Oh, yes.
No.
Yeah. We always love hearing about
Oh, well,
robotics.
Rutland Area Robotics will be going to a little town out, there are no little towns outside Boston, but outside Boston for a competition this weekend, and we're excited to be going, and they will be representing Vermont.
Is this regional? Is it like a New England thing?
It's just a fun run for the end of season, so, yeah. I'm sorry?
What little town?
Good question.
What was the question?
What town?
Oh,
I'm gonna have to look that up, but they'll point me in the right direction.
thanks.
Melrose? Is there a Melrose? That's where it is.
Any other board announcements? All right, let me circle back one more time for public to be heard. Not seeing anyone. We will have time again at the end of our meeting. But at this point, Caleb, it's all you.
All right, and it is all me today. This meeting probably won't be too eventful for me. So obviously school year is officially started. Definitely the hardest school year for me, the most challenging. We have L and R days, so my L days are AP Lit first block, AP Calc second block, AP Government Politics third block, and then Study Hall fourth block. And then my R days are Study Hall, AP Physics, Study Hall, Study Hall. So my R days are a little bit lighter, but I've been gone a lot from school recently. So I'm fighting through getting caught back up for all that. I missed 2 days last week from some sort of sickness that's been going around recently. And then I'm missing 2 days this week. So definitely need to get caught up.
We appreciate you being here
But
today.
other than that, I don't think there's too much going on. Golf season's going to end, I think, first week of October is boys state qualifier. And then girls state finals is, I think, also the first week of October. So we only have like 4 or 5 matches left, including senior night. And then I'll be done sports until the spring.
So you're on the golf team?
Yeah. And then I don't think we have any productions or anything. I think most of that, at least at our school, is during the winter and early spring.
Caleb, maybe in our last meeting or the meeting before, you and Brianna had a sort of an update and a perspective on the new cell phone policy. And I'm curious about how that's going a few weeks in terms of implementation and other reflections that you have on that.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of unseen, or unexpected, I should say, unexpected inconsistencies within the implementation, at least at my school, whether it's special accommodations, 504s, whatever. There was a matter that I'll share. It was now resolved, but just in case there's any other cases like it at whatever other schools. I had a friend who had a 504 that stated during non-instructional periods they could listen to music as relation to a disorder that they have. And they were told that they couldn't use their phone to listen to music, even though they offered to even bring in other devices, and that was also not allowed. So like I said, that has now been resolved and they can use their phone for that reason. But there was a point in time when I was not very happy with the school, to say the least, just because the handling of the situation, in my opinion, was pretty poor, because it was kind of thrown to the side. because when it was first brought up, they had asked the teacher, you know, like, well, when can I? Like, or what do you want me to do? Like, I offered to bring in like an iPad, I offered to bring in literally any device, and I was told no. So what do you want me to do? It's in my 504 that was pre-existent of the new law. So what do you want me to do? And they were basically met with a cold shoulder. So like I said, it's now been resolved, it's fine, but at the time it was definitely worrying, and I can see that happening in many other situations where maybe the adults in the situation are less caring and it doesn't get resolved. And of course, I had a meeting with Zoe where we discussed a multitude of other things, whether it's language requirements or things of that nature, just a lot of unexpected things that came with it. I mean, overall, I think our school, at least, and like my friend group, was already pretty good at doing stuff outside and whatever. Like, my friend and I, we had basically mirror schedules for almost 3 years straight now. The only class we don't have together is one block every other day. So basically 3 years straight, we've had the same schedule. And we've always like played cribbage in study halls, and we've done whatever. But our friend group's always been really good at doing that. So I would say within our friend group, it hasn't really changed too much. But I think overall, people still like use their phone all the time at lunch and stuff. I don't think it's really changed much in terms of lunch. But I don't think there's anything else.
Well, for the update. And Caleb, you and I were talking at lunch about how, like with calculus, like there'll be QR codes in your book that you can't access because you don't have your phone. And so like these are links that would take you to help you figure out how to solve a problem. So have you guys sort of figured out a workaround around that, or?
Well, unfortunately, not really. Because I mean, even that very teacher, who was the former principal's wife, who is now, he's retired. Well, not retired, he's done being the principal. He's now working in our ag department. But we both agreed, like me and the teacher, like it would be very useful to be able to use my phone for that purpose. Because honestly, I don't have a ton of time outside of my study halls to do homework right now with sports and whatever else. So being able to use my phone during that time would help a lot, especially with catching up when I'm missing the class and I don't fully understand how to do some of the stuff. But we're still working on that. I mean, there have been even teachers who are like catching themselves like having like a lesson plan on their phone or like things like that, and they have to move everything to their computer or stuff like that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Caleb?
Sounds like it's a process.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time. Probably every situation is going to be different for a while. I'm sure everyone's using great patience at the moment, so.
In school, part of the new law, schools aren't required to implement the cell phone ban until next year, but many have started to implement it, and so we're certainly learning through those early adopters. And as Caleb mentioned, I met with him, I also met with Brianna, and we're talking with other students just to make sure that we can incorporate that perspective as we're developing the model policy, which the Agency of Education will provide in December.
Well, I'm sure it is kind of helpful to have these schools basically do
Lived
beta
experience,
tests,
yes.
so that when you come up with the policy, you can have those experiences to help inform the guidelines.
Very practical considerations.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, we now have a presentation from the Montpelier Roxbury School District, and we all have a copy of the presentation that was sent out in the agenda packet, added to it last night. But the title is Building Connections Through Adolescence. So Superintendent Bonesteel, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, for the record, again, I'm Libby Bonesteel, this very proud superintendent here. We have a collection of stories to tell you today. One of the things that we really value here at Montpelier Roxbury is engagement of students and making sure that they have multiple paths to figure out where they want to go in life. Our goal is for any child who graduates to have a limitless number of choices they can make. So if they want to make a choice to go to a four-year school, they have the skill and confidence to do that. If they want to go travel abroad for a year and a half, they have the skills and confidence to do that. If they want to go into the trades, they have the skills and confidence to do that. choices would be limitless here for our graduates. That is what we're going for. And so we do that by multiple pathways. And I'm sure as the state board, you've seen presentations and you've heard musical groups and talked about things, and you think of the regular co-curriculars like athletics and that kind of thing. So we wanted to spice it up and show you all the different ways that we connect with our adolescents. But we're going to start actually, which may sound a little odd, with Nick Connor, who's our Director of Student Engagement and Data. And Nick is our chronic absenteeism guru, because we can't engage with students if they're not here. So Nick is going to start us off.
Well, and let me just interrupt. Maureen, do we need to have everyone sign in?
That would be nice. We don't
Okay.
need to, but
Okay, so the papers are on the stage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Nick Connor, Director of Student Engagement and Data with Montpelier Roxbury Public Schools. Getting the opportunity to chat with you, I think very briefly about chronic absenteeism in our district. Just to level set and check with the group, are folks familiar with what the definition of chronic absenteeism is? Can you just give a hand?
Can you go over that again?
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Not seeing many hands, I'll quickly go over what chronic absenteeism is. So we're talking about missing 10% or more of school for any reason. Excused, unexcused, out of school suspension. We're really addressing lost instructional time, regardless necessarily of, was this just ABU, was this just ABE? We look at chronic absenteeism as a canary in the coal mine. It's often an indicator that something is happening for a student and family that we're not serving well. And so historically, schools will look at only unexcused absences and go through a truancy process. That's kind of the historical lens of attendance, and we look at it very differently. So there's a lot of research behind chronic absenteeism. Reading at grade level by the time you're in third grade. If you're chronically absent in kindergarten and first grade, the likelihood of you reading at grade level by the time you're in third grade is very low. If you're looking at middle school achievement, it gets lower, and then a higher likelihood of dropping out of school in high school. So this is why we look at chronic absenteeism. There's national trends with chronic absenteeism. Post-pandemic, we saw it go up. We saw it nearly double. And so when we're looking at what's been happening at the national landscape, you can see here in 1819, it was about 16% of young people across the country were chronically absent. After the pandemic, that jumped to 30%. So nearly 8 million more young people were chronically absent after the pandemic. I'm not sure if that surprises anyone. Most of us in classrooms, it's not wildly surprising to see that data. So what we've seen nationally is the numbers aren't coming down very quickly. They've come down marginally across the country. Even looking at some of the most recent data, it's a couple of lower percentage points. So as we move forward with the slides, I don't know who's controlling it. They're doing a great job. In Vermont, the latest data that I've seen is from 2023, where 30% of young people were chronically absent in the state. When we start to disaggregate that data, we're looking at young people who may have an IEP. 37% of those students are chronically absent. Young people that may be economically disadvantaged, 41% of them are chronically absent. And young people experiencing homelessness, 63% are chronically absent. So 63% missing 10% or more of the school year has a dramatic impact on a young person's ability to not only engage and excel academically, but we're also talking about social emotional wellness as well. So when we see these high rates of chronic absenteeism, we know there's a whole lot we need to do, and we need to shift our mindset from a truancy and compliance mindset to a mindset of connection and partnership. So that's what we've done in Montpelier. As we go to the next slide, you can see our data for the last 4 years. So we shifted how we look at attendance about 4 years ago to really be thinking about this not looking at our families and students as problems to be solved, but as partners in the work. So we know that families are our students' first and most consistent educators, and to think that we can do this work without them is foolish. If we only use a truancy mindset, if we're only looking at unexcused absences, we are totally missing the boat on what's really going on. I've been in a lot of truancy hearings here in Vermont, and in my time with Denver Public Schools, 100% of them were young people living in poverty. That's a problem. So we really shifted how we think about attendance to think about how do we partner with our families and how do we connect with our students in a way that will really address what's happening. So, sorry, back to that previous slide. If we can look at our numbers, so 4 years ago we made this shift. We were at 32% of our students were chronically absent at that point in our district. The next year, so we put a lot of investment in, built some capacity that first year, and we said, okay, we're really going to focus on this. We're going to look at every single absence. We care about lost instructional time much more than I care about calling up the state's attorney and filing truancy. So we need to respond early and we need to respond often. So after that first year, we were thinking, all right, great, our numbers are going to rocket. And they came down 2 percentage points, and we were like, ugh, I wish that was better. But the reality is with chronic absenteeism, if you have chronic absenteeism rates of more than 20% in your district or in your schools, it's a systemic issue. You aren't going to case manage your way out of 32% chronic absenteeism. So that next year, we put a ton of energy into systems response, everything from, how we write a letter home about attendance. So the state requires us to notify families by letter based on a certain number of absences. But historically, and in most districts across Vermont, the language quickly is about court and state's attorney and DCF. We removed all of that language from our letters, and our letters start with, we want to partner with you. How can we do better? How can we best learn from you? We started doing a lot more home visits. We started spending more time in living rooms than we did in classrooms in some situations. So this mindset shift was critical. And over this next year, we took it from about 30% to 19% in our 23-24 school year. So we saw huge gains in this work, and we're really excited about this. Last year, we were at 20%, so we've kind of plateaued. So we're now at that level of our systems work has been done, and we've put a lot of investment into how we partner with our families and center the voices of families that are not typically centered. And now we need to start building in our case management style. How are we responding early and often? So already in our district, when a young person is missing 2 days in September, we're looking at the data and trying to understand what's going on. Okay, they might have a cold. We shouldn't do anything. Actually, let's look at the data from last year. Were they chronically absent? How can we reach out to this family from a place of, we notice sickness has hit the house, and that's always hard at the start of the year. How can we help you? Just that message alone can go such a long way in moving the needle on this work. So as we move forward, just want to look at one more thing on the next slide. There is a sequence to this work and how we make these shifts in our district. The first shift is mindset. If we are going from a place of compliance and looking at attendance only from a place of you are mandated to be here because there's a compulsory age of attendance, we're missing the mark. If we are seeing our families as the problem, if we continue to go to DCF for educational neglect, before actually connecting with our families, we're missing it. So how do we start to see our families as partners in the work and not look at attendance as something that we need to take a punitive approach to, but we need to take an approach of connection? So that's the first step, is mindset. The next step is actionable data. So we had to work really hard to ensure that we are looking at the right data. We understand what it means to miss a day of school here in Vermont. The law says, based on your grade, there's a certain number of hours. It's kind of an algorithm to figure out what the day of attendance is in Vermont. So we built our data around that. We looked at disaggregated data. We saw that young people experiencing homelessness, young people who may be qualifying for free and reduced lunch were absent much more than their peers. So we started to look at that actionable data. We then built capacity with the role of community liaison, which I was in. That started about 4 years ago because we wanted to really address this work. Then we can get into strategies. Often with chronic absenteeism, you think, chronic absenteeism is a problem, let's do strategies. If you've missed actionable data, if you've missed changing your mindset, you've missed the mark. And then we can get to the outcomes that we're starting to see in our data. So all this is to kind of tee up today, which is to say the mindset is first and how we work with our students and families and how we develop partnership with our student and families. And then we can get into some of these other strategies. And a lot of what you're going to hear today are ways that we are really working hard to make sure young people feel engaged and a strong sense of belonging in our schools. And so with that, I think I'm going to pass it off to maybe Julie Julie Conrad, our middle school principal.
And if we have questions, do you want us to wait to the end, or?
Yeah, I'd say let's wait till the end.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm here really briefly just to introduce some of our students and our programs. So Next, you're going to learn from our MSMS Sustain program. It's a program that's been long running in Main Street Middle School. It's one of the things that we do beyond just our core academics, as we think it's really important that our students know our place in this world and how they can make some changes. So I'd like to introduce Dawn and a couple of our students to come up and share with you their thoughts.
Thank you. Sorry. Glad you're okay.
Thank you very much for having us. My name is Don Taylor, and I teach sustainability at Main Street Middle School. And we've brought some of our student leaders here to help with the presentation.
Hi, I'm Ailey Corbett, and I'm an 8th grader at the Main Street Middle School. Hi, I'm Lena, and I'm also an 8th grader at the middle school.
So after a long time in humanities during the pandemic, I was given the opportunity to create a sustainability program. And our program is predicated on the belief that students of the 21st century must know and understand issues related to climate change, sustainability, and social justice. Using structures such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the 3 spheres of sustainability, including the environment, economics, and equity, students have the opportunity to build academic and transferable skills through project and community-based learning. I'm going to show you a small window into an element of our curriculum that feeds into the community and that allows our students to understand how they make a difference. So we use a framework called Educate, Act, Connect, and Communicate. We educate our students about issues that are impacting our community, in this case, food insecurity. And according to Hunger Free Vermont, 2 out of 5 Vermonters are food insecure. Then we develop a plan of action in connection with community partners. Community Harvest of Central Vermont, who specializes in gleaning, donated 1,785 pounds of produce to our program last year. Our students then transformed that produce into 3,600 meals that were donated to Just Basics, the local food pantry here in Montpelier. We then communicate our work through quarterly newsletters, also through publications in local newspapers, and within the classroom through reflections, self-assessments, thank you notes to farmers, and also emails to our families. One example of the feedback that we've received from the community was a letter from the Roxbury Food Shelf. And I quote, "On behalf of the Roxbury Food Shelf and its patrons, I cannot thank you enough for the amazing and creative meals you've provided us through this school year, and for all the love and care you've packed into them. You guys are beyond awesome. Thank you, and wishing you all a terrific summer." I believe that this kind of community feedback motivates students, provides purpose, and increases their engagement, thus making the academic tasks that we're asking them to do that much easier and that much more relevant to their educational experience.
Okay.
Lena, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lena Vitti again, and our MSMS Sustained Leadership mission is like a baseline for what we do here and like our learning, and we wrote this and we revise it each year based on like all the learning we do and just to see what fits us best throughout the year.
Okay, so we do a lot of leadership training, and that's really what our program is all about. We have a partnership with Up for Learning, which is incorporated into our school as well. It's kind of a guideline for our program. We also plan retreats with them quarterly for the Sustained Leadership program to reflect on how we've been doing, as well as the main frontier of our program is based on youth and adult partnerships, and that's really what Up for Learning is all about. So it's a great way to incorporate leadership and sustainable work.
Yeah, and then our skills and standards are like another guideline for all the learning we do with like all the transferable skills that we can use in all these other subjects. And basically, yeah, just like a guideline for our learning. And they just provide like the base for what we do.
We have a bunch of stats from last year's school year, and they really are hard evidence of how much our program has thrived. A few specifically is we gleaned 1,500 pounds of apples from orchards after the season, and we turned that into applesauce, bread, and other foods that were then donated. We hold drives to help the community, as well as we had 3 teen reaching youth teams that took a training at UVM and then went on to teach science curriculum at the elementary school.
Yeah, and then lastly, we have our student leadership reflections, which Mr. Taylor interviews us after like every year in leadership, and just to see how we've done, and it provides like another baseline for what we can do next year and what they can do to help us contribute more and to just like make the program better and more efficient.
Yeah, specifically there's one we highlighted here I'm most proud of, especially in the newsletter. I've been contributing and helping to educate the community about what we are doing, because educating is what you need to do before you take action. You need to be educated to take action efficiently, and that kind of just sums up what we've been doing for us specifically these past 2 years on how we can prepare ourselves for not just high school, not just college, but upcoming years, and how we're going to go out our lives and take action. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Take care.
So the other middle school program that we'll be sharing with you is the Solidarity Craft Fair. And this is an interdisciplinary connection between our Innovation Lab teacher, our Spanish teacher, and our art teacher, and those programs working together. And again, another opportunity where we have students providing some great leadership opportunities for them. And I think our students, these are our most recent graduates from our middle school, so they're actually high school students here, so it's also a special treat for me to see them here. Sorry. So that's Eli Rosenberg, our innovation teacher, Beth Merrill's our Spanish teacher, and Sarah Sprague is our art teacher.
Thank you for having us.
So the Solidarity Craft Fair was run by a local organization for over 25 years. And this fair offered a robust venue in downtown Montpelier for 20 to 40 craftspeople around Vermont. And local businesses also donated to a silent auction, and supporters made homemade lunches to sell. When that organization stopped fundraising, the fair was slated to end, but many vendors who participated over the years really wanted to keep it going, and since they count on it to earn a living, like one fair helps them really contribute to their income through the whole year. When that happened, simultaneously I became the Spanish teacher at MSMS, and I brought the fair to our school with the belief that 8th graders could produce some products, but in addition to that, organize and keep this well-loved community event going. And at the same time, it could serve as a fundraiser for our 8th grade trip to ensure that all students could participate. In the wake of the pandemic, new specials classes like Innovation Lab and Sustainability, which you just heard about, arose. So for the past 3 years, students in those specials classes, along with art students, have been making products to sell, both like gift products as well as food for the luncheon. And each year, the new 8th grade class takes over the organizing of the fair and all the responsibilities. RPS has an equity policy by which any opportunity we offer must be made available to all the students. So this fair is a way that all students can contribute their labor as a contribution to the end of the year trip, and as they gain experience organizing a real world community event at the same time.
Sure. Okay, I'm Alice, and I'm a 9th grader at MHS. And so basically in iLab, we start by learning design and tool skills with a small project for Mr. Rosenberg, like a 3D printed master sword or a sticker with our name on it. And this is kind of like the cupcake level of our project-based learning. That's kind of a metaphor I'll use a lot because that's what we used in class. So. After that, we move on to slightly bigger things like a t-shirt or like a small gift for someone else. This is something we want for ourselves or someone we know. And this is like the birthday cake level. And in 8th grade, our wedding cake project brings together all of these skills into something that benefits not only us individually, but the entire 8th grade and people in our community. And some of the things we make are like earrings or mosaics. And we design these for people we think are going to be shopping at our craft fair. Lots of people in all of the 8th grade innovation and art classes come up with designs that they believe we can sell. And then a smaller group of students choose to work on the fair even more. And they actually pick out the products that we think will sell really well. We set prices for them and decide how many to make. And this is based on our previous knowledge of what we sold last year, what we can feasibly sell them for, and also what it costs to make them. Some of our most popular products are earrings, necklaces, and fridge magnets. And all of these things are part of our larger social mission with the project to fund our trip and help the community by donating to Just Basics. Oh. At the craft fair, we run a table selling the products we've made. There are shifts of students who run the table and sell stuff, and others who come to clean up afterwards and pack up the stuff we didn't sell.
I'm Teddy. I'm a 9th grader here at MHS, and I helped coordinate this event last year. And coordinating this event meant being in contact with vendors who are renting spaces from us, with media outlets to purchase ads, and with local businesses who we solicited donations from. It forced many of us out of our comfort zones and into real-world experiences where we practiced our communication skills and found amazing success. So then, we started setting up the fair the afternoon before it would actually be, and we followed the vendor map which we created, and so we set up the tables and then labeled them with the vendors who would be there, allowing the vendors to come in later and set up their stuff so it would all be ready when the fair started. We set up bidding sheets for the silent auction, which we collected donations for the silent auction from local businesses. We sold lunch and we sold baked goods with food made by students in the MSMS sustainability class, which you just heard about. And then 8th graders were responsible for running the silent auction and making calls to the winning bidders and distributing the items which people won. They were also responsible for cleaning up the fair at the end of the day.
Historically, we'd like to know this began about 2.5 years ago through a STEAM challenge grant that the Agency of Education basically announced. And the two of us, Sarah and myself, came up with a vision for what it could be like. Gotcha. Yeah, thank you. So we began 2.5 years ago. Thank you. We began 2.5 years ago with the idea that the social mission, the tool making, and the design thinking that we incorporated could be
That's gorgeous.
We began with the idea that the design thinking, the tool use, and the social mission could be incorporated into something that students would invest themselves in. Start with something for ourselves, a cupcake, something a little bit more take-homeable, like this particular piece of glass, and then finally something that we could sell for a greater purpose. And it's taken flight at this point. We'll do it again this coming year with 8th graders who have not yet really started, because it's only the 15th, but even for our 5th graders, the students who put together these ideas and the basic framework that they do something that has a purpose and that what they make is for themselves and then for other purposes is something that we built into all 4 years of our 5th through 8th grade curriculum. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Gingold, principal of Montpelier High School. Welcome and thank you for being here. At this time, I'd like to introduce Tom Sabo, Sam Boyce, and Sam Bromley, who will talk about how we also develop relationships and connect science and these extended learning opportunities with our students.
I know, it's bright looking that way.
I know.
I'm used to looking that way. I've never really looked this way.
I feel like we're being interrogated. You're going to ask us all kinds of questions, right?
Totally.
I see your faces.
I have a student joining me any second to talk about the summer program that I run here at the high school called Food, Farm, and Society. But I'll take a step back for a second. For a number of years here, we've been using the concept of sustainability to integrate across the curriculum. And then more specifically, we've been using the food system as a vehicle to get at those concepts, right? To bring relevance, to bring hands-on experiential projects. We have classes that are starting various food crops in the spring. We have classes that are harvesting them in the fall and using them in the cafeteria in a number of different ways, which these guys are going to talk about. That left the summer wide open. Always a challenge for school gardens. Right? We tried, the various formulas that other schools have used, community volunteers and all, and that worked. But there was so many learning opportunities that were missed, right? That weren't taken advantage of by just using adult volunteers periodically through the summer. So we created this programming. That's okay. We created this 4-week program called Food, Farm, and Society to kind of fill that gap between the spring and the fall, to maximize the productivity, to continue the programming, but also to take advantage of those learning opportunities. You can see on the slides, it says Center for Sustainable System. That is an educational nonprofit that supports sustainable food system education based here at Montpelier High School. It's grant funded. The school district's heavily invested in these efforts as well, but we raise additional money for some supplies, for student stipends, because students get paid for half the time and they get academic credit for the other half. I'm going to pause here and let Tristan Bradley, who was a student this past summer, through Farm Society, explain the program. And Sam Boyce, by the way, is also an alumnus of the program. She'll be speaking after. Okay, Tristan?
All right. Thanks, Mr. Sabo. Hi, I'm Tristan Bradley. I'm a 10th grader here at MHS, and I did this program this past summer. I'm here to explain what we did and what we learned during this program. So the days were split into 2 sections generally. There was the morning and the afternoon. And in the morning, we did the hands-on work where we would work outside, work in the greenhouse, work in the hoop house, and we learned about the tools, planting methods, and we got the hands-on experience that you couldn't get in a classroom. Then we'd have lunch, take a break, and we would move on to the second part of the day, which was the classwork. We learned about the biology, history, evolution, and economics of farming and the food systems. So, can we go back a slide? I think we skipped a few. Thank you. So here you can see on your left, that's a picture of some of the outdoor gardens. You have the hoop house and a little corner of the greenhouse in the background. In the middle is inside of the hoop house. On the left of the hoop house, we are growing tomatoes in the middle There are some cantaloupes, and on the right, we have our peppers, and the hoses in the middle are our irrigation system.
They had some of the cantaloupe before.
Oh, they did? Was it good?
Yeah, that was the starts of this cantaloupe right there in the center picture.
And all the way on the right is us in our bee suits. The photo farthest to the left is a better photo of the greenhouse and later on the outdoor gardens after we had planted them. The middle photo is us hilling potatoes, and the photo all the way on the right is us putting the broilers in their first home. They're currently outside. You guys probably have seen them.
Tristan, if I may, the potatoes is a perfect example. That's an heirloom variety potato planted by the Spanish classes, like the Spanish 4 and the AP Spanish classes, as a way to, access the culture. Do the same with corn. So there's numerous classes working in the spring and the fall, but the summer is the Food Farm and Society students who kind of, connect all of that.
Yeah, that's all I have for that slide.
So I'm now going to pass it over to these guys. I already, yeah, more slides.
Yeah, this one. So the top photo you see is us gleaning. Gleaning, as you guys might know, is when either farmers leave a part of their fields that they don't harvest, or it's just extra crop that hasn't been harvested, and that is harvested and given to people who are food insecure, which is 11% of Vermonters. The bottom three photos are us working at different farms, including Dog River and Ananda Gardens. And we learned about how those farms worked economically, and we worked for them and did some of their jobs, which was a very interesting experience, especially at Ananda Gardens, where we learned about their CSA and how that worked. And that's about all I have.
So what happens to the food that we grow? There are a couple value-added products that we actually sell, largely to the school community. Those funds go back into support programming. The main greenhouse, the salad greens there, go to the salad bar in the cafeteria. And then the rest of it largely goes to some school events and some school classes that also have a culinary aspect to them. So here's Sam Boyce and Sam Bromley to speak about that.
Yeah, we got the two Sams up here. So we have, I teach a cooking-based class for seniors, and then we have two culinary-based classes that are housed in our, I'm a science teacher, two culinary-based classes that are housed in our world language department that also do this work. But I'll let Sam speak a little bit about kind of what we do in our class and how that contributes to our community.
My name is Sam Boyce, as you heard previously. I'm a 12th grader at MHS, and I'm a member of the cooked class, which Mr. Bromley runs. And I've worked on all parts of the food system here at MHS, where I've grown the food and I've planted it, I've harvested it in the fall and planted in the spring. So this is my first time actually taking the food that we previously grew and turning it into food for our community and for ourselves in the class. Once the produce that is grown in the gardens is taken out of the gardens, usually by the environmental applications class at our school, it's then taken to the cooking lab, and it's left to us mostly to deal with it. Previously, during the early part of the year, we have vacuum sealed some of the tomatoes and peppers so that they can later be turned into hot sauce to sell to the school community to raise funds for the program. We've also taken some of the cabbages already and created food to learn how to create food that we have never made before in our class. This class also is used to help plan for school events that we have surrounding food at the high school. A couple of them are the Fall Harvest Celebration, Soul and Soup for the Soul, which is a new, semi-new celebration, and Pizza for the People in the spring. Specifically around Fall Harvest, our cooking class helps plan. Can you go one more in the slides?
specifically with Fall Harvest, these are some pictures of the event from last year. The cooked class helps plan the entire menu based on what was grown during the summer. And we write basically a menu telling you about what is in the meal and basically where it's come from. There's a whole presentation during the celebration that talks about food travel and how food can contribute a lot to CO2 emissions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you did a great job, and I think this is one of 3 large meals that we serve with as much local produce as possible, and we work really hard to incorporate as many of the things out of the gardens and greenhouses and preserve those things now that a lot is coming out of the gardens, so that we can continue to use those things throughout the year and involve students in that whole process of not just growing it, but now that it's coming out, like how can we use that to both feed our immediate within the school community, but also extra stuff makes its way out to the greater Montpelier community as well.
And these are pictures of Pizza for the People, where previous students, I think at least 10 years ago, made us a pizza oven that lives outside, and the spring cooked class helps create the pizzas in advance so that you can just pop them in and serve them to the community. As just a lot of our events are centered around food because it brings people together, and this class, as well as La Cucina and Le Bon Crepe, are able to help contribute to making our community stronger through the process of food.
Questions?
How many pizzas do you all make for Pizza for the People?
We typically make enough doughs for between 75 and 100 pizzas. Some of them get burnt, end up on the floor. It's definitely a learning process. We usually serve around 70 pizzas at an event like that, which is a whole day undertaking in addition to multiple days prior to prep for that.
And you saw the structure over it. That's a living roof where we grow toppings. So yeah, students in a summer program built the pizza oven, but they also built every structure you saw out there today, including the main greenhouse, which was built for math summer school credit in 2003. And we opened it in 2004.
The 4-week summer program, is that for credit? Is it volunteer?
It's a semester's worth of credit.
Okay.
If it's completed, and there's formative assessments, summative assessments, all the standard learning expectations like any other class. And then it's $14 an hour for half the time. So there's a lot of work associated with producing food. And there's certainly learning too, but you can weed for an hour one day and kind of get most of that lesson accomplished. You do that every day, and now you kind of have an exploitive workforce, I think. So we raise money to pay them as well. It's a big part of the lesson.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This time, we'd like to introduce Heather McLean, Sam Boyce again, and Riley Sheehan. The difference of this presentation is that its roots and foundation really comes from student voice and activism and social justice, and how this has led to our Race Against Racism project each year.
Hi, my name is Riley Sheehan. I'm in 12th grade here at MHS, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer of Club Action.
Hello again. My name is Sam Boyce. I'm a 12th grader, and I'm the Chief Logistics Officer of Club Action. Club Action is an activism club that organizes peer tutoring here at the school, as well as creating the event that's called Race Against Racism that happens within our community, school community, and our Montpelier community. We are here to talk about our experiences in organizing the Race Against Racism last year, as well as our experiences in previous years.
Yeah, so historically, so for the past 8 years, the Race Against Racism has been a community event with a race and a rally with the purpose and mission of uplifting BIPOC voices, and we also raise money for anti-racism organizations. Last year, though, instead of the community event, we organized an in-school event where we brought in a diverse group of workshop presenters from around the state to lead workshops for our entire student body. Afterwards, we had an assembly with speeches, poetry, and music from BIPOC youth and adults. And this year, we plan to add the community event back as well, and then also put on the school event to go alongside it.
Throughout this event, we were able to expose our wider school community to cultures and people that they otherwise wouldn't have connected with. 87.5% of our school is Caucasian, so they don't often get introduced to new cultures at our school community. And through this, specifically workshops, which we offered 20 of, we were able to introduce our student body to different topics that they wouldn't have ever learned about before. Some of these workshops were intergenerational trauma, refugee support, challenging Eurocentric curriculums in schools, which was mostly given through history lessons, and talking about social class, as well as a lot of art and there was a dancing / music groups, which was a part of celebrating diverse voices within our community.
So one of the main parts of what Club Action did was outreach and networking. So we had to develop skills in marketing and outreach, and we learned how to connect with organizations and community partners. For example, we had about 25 different partners in making the Race Against Racism, so organizations that would come in either just to support the planning of it or for workshops or to present at the assembly. Some examples of these organizations are the Education Justice Coalition, Migrant Justice, Everytown, and then we also had students from schools all around Vermont, like Harwood, Randolph, Burlington, Oxbow, South Burlington. We had these students that came in, again, either to help us plan or to be a part of the event itself. So we learned how to connect with people that we have never met with before, and so communication became a huge part of what made Club Action. And we would build relationships before the event, and we would keep contact with these organizations or specific people throughout the whole year. And then during the event, we would work to strengthen these relationships so we have these connections in the future as well. Throughout the year, we would have meetings either just with Club Action or with Club Action and our community partners. And we also had workshops with organizations from around the state throughout the year.
Our efforts in networking didn't only benefit us as Club Action, but they also benefit our community, specifically our school community, because we were able to facilitate students and faculty meeting diverse people and organizations that they wouldn't have known about before or been able to connect to. It's not just a personal relationship that we were able to build, it was a connection, a professional relationship that would be able to connect students for a CBL, which is a community-based learning program, or something similar in the future, because we would not have built those connections before. So we'd have that groups to call on in the future?
Yeah, and so outreach and networking weren't the only skills that we had to develop in order to make the Race Against Racism event as effective as possible for our student body. We had to learn a variety of skills, such as learning how to write grants and fundraise to raise enough money to make this possible. In total, last year we raised over $16,000, but another challenge that came with that was the financial decision making. So where we're going to put our money to which people, which organizations, and how we're going to make this possible. So logistics and organization was also a big part of creating the Race Against Racism. And then again, there were just these little challenges, so working through conflict, like again with the financial decisions, like where we're going to put our money, and then also me and another student that is part of Club Action, we went to a harm reduction training to be prepared in case there was harm that happened during the Race Against Racism. We had to work on like public speaking, like during the event. We had students from Club Action that would present during the assembly, and then working with other people just to make the event as enriching for our student body as possible.
Being a part of Club Action has allowed our club members to grow a variety of skills that they otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn about in a school setting, and to be able to practice those skills throughout the school year. And the connections that we were able to build during this process are very valuable with connecting us to other social justice organizations throughout the state and other schools that are also trying to work towards what we are with creating a safe and fair environment for everyone in our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to have Matt McLean, who's our Director of Flexible Pathways, and our FEAST team membership come up. And they're going to explain just another avenue of how students access the Act 73 Flexible Pathways program.
Hello.
We also have like a free microphone if you guys, if that would.
I got two.
Yeah, let's do that. Heather, you want to go? Yeah, Heather's also a member of our flexible pathways team in addition to being the advisor for Club Action.
It'd be great if you all could just introduce yourselves.
Yeah, is that cool?
That'd be great.
My name's Danny Kerpan. I'm in 12th grade at MHS.
My name is Sage Porter, and I'm a senior here.
My name is Katie Kenny, and I'm a Flexible Pathways and FEAST teacher.
My name is Kim Myers, and I am the program manager with the FEAST program.
I'm David Hartnett. I'm a FEAST volunteer from Montpelier.
And I'm Heather McLean. I was the Club Action advisor and also a Flexible Pathways teacher here at Montpelier High School.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being together. I'm going to do a short overview of some of the characteristics and some of the things that we're thinking about as part of our Flexible Pathways department, and then I'm going to turn it over to the team here to share some of their experiences within the FEAST program. So thanks for having us today, and thanks for your service to the state. Curiosity. It's a fundamental disposition for lifelong learning. And as a public institution and as a school community, we have the opportunity to ask ourselves, what is our obligation to not only grow, but also support curiosity, which is a through line towards lifelong learning. And so that happens as evidenced through a number of the things that you're hearing about today, and I'm sure a lot of the journeys that you're taking in different school communities. But there's just a tremendous amount of curiosity and engagement that's happening, and it's happening in various venues within the school community. And Flexible Pathways is just one area that it's experienced, and we're seeking to grow it and support it. There's a number of different pathways that many schools have through Act 77. We are not an exception to that, and we also feel grateful and a responsibility to ensure that we are supporting, promoting these pathways for not only equitable access, but for equitable support within each of the pathways. And so there's a list, I won't necessarily read them all, but you can see there's a robust list of different pathways that complement not only the general education classroom experiences, but also a lot of the co-curricular and athletic experiences that students are having are also kind of complemented within any number of these pathways. Go to the next slide. These are just some numbers from last year. 95% of last year's graduating class students participated in at least one, and many students participate in numerous different pathways as part of their educational experience at Montpelier. 51% of the student body participated in at least one of those last year. That's grades 9 through 12. And 81%, I'm going to kind of name this, 81% have participated in one of the pathways this past year, which is a significant number of students for a school. And the bump from 51 to 81 is we began thinking more about how do we engage younger adults as 9th and 10th graders in their own pursuit of aspirational development. And so we started a pathway called Extended Learning Opportunities, which offers opportunities for all students, but including 9th and 10th graders, to begin to dip their toes into some of their aspirations and curiosities that they have. We can go to the next slide, thank you. 300 plus community partners. Kim and David are two of our partners, important partners, within the many school community partnerships that we have as part of the department. And they're the backbone of student experiences where adults and professionals are saying, yes, I would welcome this young adult into my work, into my profession, into my application, and welcome them into that space and help them learn a new skill, become more aware of a career, et cetera. So we're just super grateful. And Danny and Sage are stewards of these partnerships through their own actions as citizens within this community and citizens within the Montpelier community, so thank you for that. And all the other students who are engaging in these partnerships. We can tuck into the next one. We look at alumni testimony, making sure that the through line of experience from student to adult and to professional is understood, and we often will tap on alumni to support student experiences as community partners. And so we're just constantly looking at, how are our alumni kind of actualizing their own aspirations, not only as an adult, but what was the experience that they had in high school, and how did that inform their experiences both at the post-secondary training or education level and then into their careers. These next two slides, I won't go into the numbers specifically, but they're there just to note that one of the important characteristics of our work is to look carefully at how our students are accessing the different pathways, and to look at kind of like what our student population is on a whole, and then looking at different demographic participation in each of the pathways as they pertain to the whole school population of that particular student demographic. And so it gives us an opportunity to look at that critically and to talk as a team about what that information and what that data says, and then what do we do with that data in order to better inform our both access and support of those pathways. So this particular table has BIPOC students in each pathway, and this particular table has students on either IEP or 504 plans and their participation in different pathways in a few of the years. Cue up the next slide. All right, I'm going to turn it over here, and again, thanks again for your time today and for having us. Again, thanks team for being in the mixer. Totally appreciate it. One of the pathways I'm going to turn it over to Katie and team to talk about is the Feast School Community Partnership. And it's kind of along in the suite of other pathways that we have. And just again, thanks for taking the time to share. Thanks.
Hi everybody, thanks. So we have Feast, it's a program where students, or if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. And the next, thanks. It's a program where students go every morning, Monday through Thursday, 8:45 to 11:15, and they're helping Meals on Wheels, the Feast program, cook meals. And then on Fridays, it's a classroom community time, and so we go out into the community, or community members come to us, and we learn all about what's out there in the world and what paths you can take after high school. And yeah, so do you want to go to the next? Should we go to the next slide? Okay. So this year, or last year at Feast, these are just some of the numbers that, some of the data from what the students did, and there's some pictures of the students delivering meals for the Meals on Wheels members. We've gone and shoveled snow, and yeah, lots of things, you know, whatever they need, we'll go and help them out. And do you want to read that part, Steve?
Okay. Yeah. From September 1st to 2024, from September 1st to May 16th, 2025, these students have had a hand in producing 11,000 meals for aging Vermonters and folks with disabilities. We've served over 350 individuals in central Vermont. We've worked alongside senior volunteers in the kitchen. We've cut countless vegetables and baked stuff and packed meals and all the stuff that is required. And it's also really helped us communicate effectively for speed and safety in the kitchen and like learning kitchen skills and all that. We've asked a lot of questions that are important and told important things and learned important things about ourselves. And we've positively met people's needs while bringing our community together.
Yeah. A lot of thank you notes. So on Fridays, we go out into the community, and or people invite us, or whatever the students are interested in, and we can just learn about welding or owning a flower store, or just, you know, life after high school and paths you can take. And so we had 22 field trips last year, and so for every trip that we've taken, they write a handwritten thank you note. So they wrote a lot of thank you letters.
Mm-hmm. It's a good skill.
Right. And so if you just want to go to the next page or the next slide, sorry. So here's some pictures of these guys cooking in the kitchen. They have to work together. They're earning social studies or global studies, language arts, math, and an elective credit through this, or credits and standards and proficiencies. And so, yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then one more, or maybe you might have to go back. Sorry, if you could go back one. Maybe one back. So, sorry, there's a picture here of us down in the bottom corner, and I'll let Kim talk about that picture really quick.
My name is Kim Myers, and I'm the program manager for the Feast program. So every morning I meet these folks when they come to the senior center. And I did just want to say that we quite literally couldn't do what we do without our student helpers. Some of them have been there multiple years. They are like managers in our kitchen, I was telling them today. And they also, the intergenerational relationships that happen in our kitchen with our senior volunteers and our Meals on Wheels clients is something really special. So last year we were invited to come to the State House. They were reading a proclamation on Meals on Wheels, and we got to meet some of our representatives, and the students were recognized at the State House for the work that they do with Meals on Wheels.
Tell them the impact that the program has made.
Oh yeah. I've been doing FEE since I was like a freshman, so like being introduced into like the flexible pathways and all that stuff has really like helped me expand my education to a point where like I didn't think that I'd be able to come to. So it's really helped me like go into that, and it's helped me like break out of my shell and just kind of be a part of the community in a way that I didn't think I would. And just it really feels good to like be a part of something and help out. But yeah.
I never really did well in like normal school. I didn't really know how to ask for help, and I think FEAST has really helped me, especially in like English and social studies. Like doing that instead of being in a class sitting down and writing essays is really important for me, and also it makes me feel good that I'm doing good things and helping people in need.
Yeah. So the FEAST program emphasizes service learning as a way to build meaningful connections. By giving to others, students discover how caring for their community is also a way of caring for themselves. And with the support of Meals on Wheels staff, volunteers, clients, community members who welcome us with open arms during our field trips, this program creates a network of relationships that strengthens belonging. And through these experiences, I think you guys have taken so much pride in yourselves and also found a place where you belong.
Yeah, I think it's like if I didn't have FEAST, I probably wouldn't be where I am educationally, like, and, you know, I feel like it's really helped me with the steps.
So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing your stories. And thank you for all you're doing for the community. Yeah, the lights tough. He's like, these are my glasses.
My glasses.
I know. Again, FBI interrogation.
So that's a piece of us and how we bring our adolescence, which is oftentimes a challenging time to engage kids. And we do it from multiple angles to ensure they come see us every day. And we can really, our amazing teachers can work their magic with the kids. But happy to take any questions. And I know we also took a lot of your time, so.
Do you guys have questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple, like, generally, one step together.
So, like, what's not necessarily the most common, but what is, like, one of the most common examples of extended learning opportunities that's, like, commonly used?
Most common examples? I couldn't tell you the most common. We have a lot of community-based learnings that we call CBLs. So really most things, and I'm giggling about that because we have said no, or we probably should have said no, to a few things. Most things that a student wants to dive into, we try to make it happen for them through our Flexible Pathways team that was just up here. Matt is the person who runs that work. So I would say our community-based learning is probably the most common, but I'm going to look to see if I get a nod from Matt to make sure that's accurate.
Yeah, it's community-based learning, work-based learning is very popular. The idea of getting out in the community is, it's a developmental rite of passage into kind of young adult where you're a learner in a space to an emerging citizen with skills and dispositions that you're offering the world and you're taking them in. So I would say that's probably the biggest one. And a lot of the other ones, online and dual enrollment, are also growing, but CBL I think is probably the biggest.
So I confuse easily. So is the FEAST program a full-time program, or is it a piece of a program?
It's a piece of a program. So it's an offering for students, a small number of students who are having a hard time engaging with school, some of them. And it's just a different way to earn proficiencies with our priority standards that we've named through a community-based learning opportunity. It's a longer duration program than most of our CBLs, most definitely.
So is academic programming built into that?
Yes.
Math, other things?
Yeah, so our flexible pathways teachers, Heather and Katie, who you saw up here, and we also have one more, Joe, work really hard to incorporate different transferable skills from the different domains into the experiences. And students also, we also have teacher advisors who specialize, so we have a social studies teacher, for instance, who will be a teacher advisor for a community-based learning opportunity that specializes in that content area. So the student's responsibility is to meet with that advisor at least once a week to show how they're growing in the proficiencies that we've stated are important for graduation. So the students provide that evidence with support from an adult in the building.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank all the faculty and the students that came out today. It's always really inspiring to have the opportunity to engage with you directly and hear about the wonderful work underway. So thank you for what you're doing. It's also very much aligned. I'm going to give an update later today around the agency's strategic plan, and you have really talked about a lot of the key areas that we're focusing on, including promoting safe and healthy schools and inclusive environments and expanding college and career readiness. So it's just wonderful to really have you share a lot of those examples of how that is working in practice in schools, and how we can be a productive partner with our districts from the agency perspective. And just as a mom and a community member, I want to thank you for just the level of focus you place on really ensuring that kids feel welcome and supported in the district and giving back to the community. So thank you very much.
I didn't think that we had two of our caregivers up here on stage, and we should have made their children come up to present to you. But I didn't think about that beforehand.
No. You can threaten her with that, though.
You're like, watch out, Libby's got her eye on you.
But thank you very much.
I noted you have 13% of your, BIPOC students in your population. Is that correct?
13% BIPOC? That's not about, it sounds about right, yes.
Oh, I'm surprised by that. It's a good number.
It is.
High or surprise low?
I'm surprised it's really high in this area.
It's higher. Yeah, a lot of the Afghan refugee resettlement programming came here to Montpelier. Montpelier opened their arms to when Afghanis were coming over a couple of years ago. So that's been a wonderful addition to our student population and our family population. Yeah.
And I know you probably already know you have a compassionate leader and advocate in Jason Gingold, so you're...
Yeah, he's okay. I'll keep him around for a little while longer. Julie as well, who was up here, and Matt.
And I was going to put in a plug for the superintendent as well, right? Let's hear everybody over here for your great superintendent, right?
They're like, who's that? Thank you.
And thank you for all you do, Olivia.
Thank you.
I think one of the threads that I think connected all of these presentations is just this increased awareness of the world around the students and the power to make a difference. Starting in 5th grade and building on that, like through high school and beyond, which it's really nice to hear and to see that in action. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I think by infusing that level of responsibility and care, you're creating a student body that is just much more aware and much better prepared to go out into the world and really, hit the ground running to make a difference, because we need a lot of help. I'm curious with the chronic absenteeism. Well, 2 questions really. One, I'm wondering how this outreach is received by families, because I imagine that it's a different approach that maybe people aren't necessarily expecting, so I'm curious to know how that's been received. And then second of all, I'm wondering if you've spoken with other school districts in the state as a model for improving chronic absenteeism, and if this is a platform that could be shared.
Yeah, so I'm going to have Nick Connor come up. I told him to stay because I knew you'd have questions about that. And as he's coming up, so we opened up this position. We used to have a school resource officer actually 5 years ago and beyond. And we ended that position, and with that money, we hired a community liaison. And we were lucky enough to hire this gentleman right here. He is masterful. And when he sat down with me in one of our first meetings, he said, "What do I do?" And I said, "I don't know." One of the things I need you to do is help us understand how to get kids here, why they're not here, and you have to be honest with us of what barriers we're putting in place so that we can really knock those down. I don't want any yes ma'ams or anything with me. You have to tell us what we're doing that is inhibiting families from feeling comfortable to come into school. Because when kids aren't coming to school, that is red flashing lights to me. Should be the norm, right? This should be the safe place. And so if they're not coming, something is desperately wrong. And it's our job to figure out how to help. So Nick had a lot of experience. He used to work with Montpelier Teen Center here, moved to Colorado, did a lot of this work in Denver. And like he said earlier, he sat in a lot of living rooms. So I'll let you take on that question. He's like the mayor. It's fun to go out with him.
It's a great question of how families are responding because it isn't quite normal. And there's been a lot of research on things like home visits, and oftentimes families will reply like, home visits may be the last thing that I want. And so what we've been able to do is it's primarily about being consistent in building relationships with families. So because Libby was like, I don't know what you do, I got to do whatever. And in that sense, I was able to meet with families, and organically families would share things or ask for something or share a need or a barrier. And I was in a spot where I had capacity, and I was like, cool, I got you. Give me a text in the morning if you miss the bus. Things like that. And you just start being consistent. And we're now at a point where, Don was up here earlier discussing how the 8th grade sustainability is making meals and things like that. In addition to the meals going to the local food bank, I would go every week and I'd pick up just whatever he had. And I always had to make sure were the meals able to be microwaved, because we have families living in hotels where microwave is the only thing available to them. And instead of like going out to do home visits in response to anything, it was only to say, how you doing? And we've got a little extra food. If you guys need anything, if you don't, no worries. And so it's gotten to the point where there are neighborhoods throughout our communities where when we pull up, families come out. And that has taken years to develop, but it's also building trust with families, and we're not coming at them from a place of like, you messed up and I'm reacting to that. It's coming at oftentimes from a place of like, we know we're messing up, tell us where we're messing up and how can we fix this. So from that perspective, it's really shifted and become a norm. And there are very specific communities and neighborhoods in Montpelier specifically where we have very high rates of chronic absenteeism over the years that it's, I'll show up at the bus stop in the morning because all the families are out and I'll have coffee and donuts. And it's like, what a beautiful opportunity to connect with a family from a place of, we got you, and I just want to hear more about what you all need. So that's how families, I think, really are responding. The next piece that I think you asked about was across the state, what's happening. And around chronic absenteeism, so I'm fortunate enough to work with Dr. Heidi Schumacher up at UVM, who's doing a lot of work. And we have, through the Leahy Institute, there's a grant, and right now we have a pilot with 4 districts. So Franklin Northeast, St. Jay, White River Valley, and Orange Southwest. And it's learning how we can build this out in more districts. So I'm supporting kind of on the back end around chronic absenteeism, and she's working with our health partners in those communities to build relationships. So there's some amazing things happening, and like Lamoille has a great restorative program going right now. Attendance Works is contracting with the statewide barge network to deliver a chronic absenteeism 3-part series right now as well. So I think it's starting to happen more and more, and I know in the agency there's more conversations happening around chronic absenteeism. But across the country, 37 states have chronic absenteeism as a federal accountability metric. And so this has been happening in a lot of states for a long time, and it's great to see that Vermont is really stepping up in this space because it is a much more responsive way to engage our students and families.
At the Agency of Education, we've learned a lot from Montpelier-Roxbury School District and the strategies that you're implementing, and that's really the shift that we're trying to make as a state. So it's clear it's not just an issue here in this district. Chronic absenteeism is an issue that we are experiencing statewide, and it is a major focus of the Agency of Education. We will be co-hosting a conference on chronic absenteeism with UVM in the fall. I also partner with Dr. Heidi Schumacher to give grand rounds to the pediatric community. We're hosting focus groups across the state of Vermont with other leaders. So thank you for participating in that, to really give us feedback on how we can scale these practices to be effective in getting kids into the classroom. It's critically important. So it absolutely is a major focus. We've also organized a new team at the agency focused on safe and healthy schools, and chronic absenteeism is one of the key areas that they will be prioritizing. So thank you for your work and look forward to continue to partner.
Any other questions? This has been a fantastic presentation, and thank you everyone who's still in the audience, and I know some people had to leave, but just really appreciate you all making the time to be here with us.
Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity. We're pretty proud of what we do here, so it's good.
Thank you. All right, so next on the agenda, we have the update on the Commission on the Future of Public Education in Vermont. So since our last meeting in August, we've had two commission meetings. One was on September 8th, and then the second one was this past Monday, the 15th. We actually have a tag-along meeting tomorrow because we didn't quite finish everything that we were supposed to be doing on Monday. So we're having another meeting tomorrow just to kind of stay on track. And at those two meetings on the 8th and the 15th, we had a presentation by the Burlington School District on equitable budgeting and what that looks like. Just sort of thinking about as Vermont contemplates moving to a larger district model and how students will be funded. The money, although it's based on a per student, it's based on a specific student profile, how much money that student receives. But the money goes to the district, and then the question is, how does the district use that money? Because the district isn't using that pot of money specifically for student A. It's really, getting the pot of money, and then the question is, how do you make sure the districts are using the money in the way it was intended to support the students with the higher need? So, had a very helpful presentation from the Burlington School District about that. And then this past Monday, we had 3 superintendents who had a panel discussion because one of the other foci of the commission is that whatever process we recommend to the legislature, there should be a focus on transparency. And so what does that look like? And I had actually mentioned, the superintendent in my district has been working to, she oversees 5 schools that are some variation of like K-5 to K-8, and has been talking within the community for the past few years about closing one of the schools, 2 of the schools, reshuffling the schools. What does that look like? And it has been a really, really transparent process. And I don't think I'm saying anything that anyone who's been following the process would disagree with. It has not necessarily followed the path that I think she thought it was going to follow, and there have definitely been hiccups along the way. And I had made the suggestion that I thought it would be helpful to have her and then other superintendents throughout the state to come in and talk about, what does transparency look like? What is helpful? What is not helpful? What are lessons learned? What can the state take away from that experience to really effectuate this mandate in Act 73 about transparency in a way that's helpful and useful. So we had a really good conversation about that. And then we've also been working with our, the public, I spaced the word, the public outreach firm that we've hired to assist us. So they had done a series of public outreach sessions in the spring. They're going to be doing 5 more in the fall. The dates are yet to be determined, but it's going to be kind of a joint public outreach session to inform the work of the commission, as well as the redistricting task force that has been put together by the General Assembly to really understand what Vermonters are looking for with, how do we best implement Act 73? What does that look like? How does that feel to an average Vermonter? What are their concerns? What are they excited about? Where are some opportunities for growth? What is something that they, hold really inviolate to, what's important to them? So we have been working on a survey that will be disseminated to all, the hope is all Vermonters. Once it's finalized, I will share it, with the board and ask that you guys distribute it within your communities, whether it's a professional community or, your work communities or school communities, just to make sure that we really provide ample opportunities for feedback from everyone, whether or not they have a child in a school system or they're associated with the school system, because the tax rate affects everybody. So there will be public outreach sessions that will be scheduled, and then the survey will be disseminated. And then we will spend October, we've got 2 meetings scheduled in October before we are planning to have our draft report that will be published, again, with 30 days for public comment. So we're going to be spending the meetings in October really working on that preliminary draft report. So to that end, I had received an email yesterday from the chair of the commission and sent it out to board members where there are, well, and I've got it. I can read it for anyone who doesn't have it up. He is requesting from commission members that we get back to him by Tuesday, and so the request that I sent to you guys is that you get back to me by midnight on Sunday so that I can collate any comments that you have and then provide that to him by Tuesday's deadline. But specifically, any recommendations for what roles, functions, or decisions should be a function of local control, and what roles, functions, or decisions should be a function of state level control. 2, recommendations for necessary updates to the roles and responsibilities of school district boards and the electorate. 3, recommendations for a process for a community served by a school to have a voice in decisions regarding school closures, and a recommendation for what that process should entail. 4th, recommendations for a process for monitoring the implementation of Act 73 in a manner that is transparent and public-facing. And then 5, any other recommendations that occur to you. So if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, again, if you can email me by Sunday, I will collate them and then send them on. And what he's planning to do is we have a matrix, and he's going to put everything up there, and then we'll be spending our October meetings going through each of the decisions. Ultimately, the commission will vote on what ends up in the matrix, and that will be presented as the draft report. And then again, there will be 30 days for public comment. We will spend November reviewing the public comment, and then our final report is due in December. So I will pause there if there are any questions.
Just the comment about transparency and being on the school board, I always felt like we were in a silo trying to figure things out, and I think transparency of being able to see what other districts are doing and side-by-side comparisons in a standardized format would have really helped, because each one seemed to be presenting it in different ways when we were dealing with the budget or dealing with staffing, et cetera, that there wasn't that consistency where we could really do side-by-side comparisons with districts.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I think in the panel conversation, they highlighted some similarities and similar lessons learned. So, but the need for some consistency and larger visibility, I think, would be helpful.
Just in format would have helped immensely to be able to make comparisons.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks. Anything else? All right. So I will look for emails by Sunday. Thank you. Next up, I think we've got committee updates. So Rich, I'll start with you. I know
ladies first.
Thank you. The Committee on Small Schools, Sparse Schools Standards Committee, that's a mouthful. I think we're going to call ourselves the By Necessity Committee. By Necessity. That's charged with making recommendations to the board about how to think about this criteria by necessity for both small and sparse schools. We met last Friday and sort of set forward a plan of action for how we're going to approach the work. We'll be inviting testimony from a broad range of constituents around the state. We also are going to have several listening sessions where they're going to be just opening over listen. It won't be sort of a back and forth format. Our goal is to have a memo back to the board for its consideration, a memo with our recommendations back to the board in time to have a discussion at the November board meeting so that we can be on track for the board to hopefully take a vote at that board meeting, and we can then meet our statutory obligation back to the legislature of having recommendations to them by December 1st.
It's a busy schedule.
Yeah, we got a little bit to do. But I am confident we've got it. I'll invite Brian and Cynthia. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Shaking his head.
What is your cadence of meetings?
Right now, we're set up for every other week. I suspect we may need a few extras in there just because of the volume of work. But right now, we're set to meet not this Friday, I believe the Friday after. It's a Friday afternoon thing. Come join us. Thanks. And now, Mr. Warner.
Thank you. I'm not as prepared as you are. So we had a meeting. It lasted about an hour, and we didn't accomplish a lot because there was a couple key players that weren't there. I tried to set up a meeting so we would have another meeting before this meeting, but we had some issues because some more key players couldn't make it, and it was suggested that those people were important to us. So I think we're meeting next week, middle of next week. We set a date in our meeting, but we couldn't take that meeting. They want to hear about what indebtedness is in the state, how much there is. So it was important for the gentleman from the bond bank. I'm not going to say that phrase. Yes, thank you. So that was kind of the key. So he's going to do a report. We'd also asked that, and somebody from the Secretary's office helped us with what other states have done, because one of the comments was this can't be the first time this has ever happened. So I think we got 4 or 5. There was something in Maine, I think Portland, and then there was a couple other state ones. And then we're also going to look at what happened with, and I always get my acts wrong, but the act where we try combining school districts.
46.
Act 46, thank you. And so we are also going to look at that too, because that, as part of the articles of agreement, you had to talk about debt and how you're going to deal with that. So I believe, and it's next Tuesday, right?
Maureen can confirm.
Maureen,
I know it was rescheduled. Let me see what's on the calendar.
It's the 24th.
24th, thank you. But we definitely will need more meetings, and we only have it for an hour. But I'm hoping that we can kind of get a path forward, because it is kind of a short timeline. And I really liked the idea of a listening hearing too. So maybe that would be really good, because even if we don't have the whole committee, that's something that we can take information and reuse. And I would like to thank your office, because I would be totally lost if they weren't bailing me out and
Me too.
sending me a lot of reminder emails. That's all I have. Very interesting experiences. A lot easier when you just do something on your own.
Thank you for the updates. All right. Well, thank you. Well, Zoe, I guess this brings it to you in the Secretary's report.
Excellent, great. For my Secretary's report, I'd like to provide an update on where we are in our strategic planning process at the Agency of Education, and also to invite you to engage meaningfully in that process. It's really been a pleasure to meet one-on-one with most of you. I know I have one more board meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks. Found those opportunities to be really helpful in understanding kind of the alignment of our work. And we're going to be creating some additional opportunities from now until December to really roll up our sleeves and dive deep into this work. And so would love for the state board members to be part of that. We will be hosting a statewide planning retreat on November 4th at Killington. And the idea around this is really to take this opportunity to work with our partners in the field around refining our vision, which we've been working on with our strategic plan, and really walking through the key kind of working groups aligned to the main pillars of our strategic plan. So we're at a point now in our planning process where we've shifted from the listen and learn, that was our focus last year, into leading and launching. And so we're leading around the key priorities that the state has identified as being critical, and those have formed the pillars of our strategic plan. And within those pillars, we are launching some really key initiatives that are going to be important for us to really set the foundation for the work ahead. So in terms of the 5 pillars, we're organizing all of our work around supporting academic excellence, expanding college and career readiness, promoting safe and healthy schools, improving operational effectiveness, and enhancing special education and differentiated support for all learners. And so within each of these pillars, there's a couple of key strategies that I'll just highlight, and some of that's because I made a commitment to provide ongoing updates on those as we move forward. So within academic excellence, we are making headway on recommending to you the statewide graduation requirements. At a recent meeting, we walked you through the work plan, and we are progressing along that work plan. We are concluding our research and analysis phase and moving into the stakeholder engagement phase. In fact, we have a meeting with VCLA, so the Vermont Curriculum Leaders Associations, later this week on Friday at their annual fall conference to share our updates so far and to really get updates on the initial research evaluation recommendations related to each of the content areas and transferable skill graduation requirements. So really looking forward to that, and there's a whole other series of engagement that we will be doing from now until December with different stakeholder groups before we bring that recommendation back to the board. There'll also be time at that November planning conference to really dive into that as well. Also within academic excellence is ensuring that we can that all schools and districts have access to high quality instructional materials. So there's a big focus of that as we're continuing our support around Read Vermont and the implementation of recent literacy legislation. And then with that is tied training, right? So we know that training is really important. That's a focus also of our strategic plan in making sure that as a state, we are working with our districts to ensure that there's an appropriate level of training to support our educators in implementing these evidence-based practices and resources. And then we're doing a lot of coordination with our educator preparation partners, our ed prep partners. Out of Act 139, the agency is required to make a recommendation around how to better incorporate some of the teaching around science of reading to prepare our educators to enter the classroom, understanding how to help our kids learn to read. And so that's just one concrete example, but there's other areas where we're really looking to have tighter alignment. And we have some team members here who can expand on that. Related to the pillar focused on expanding college and career readiness, this is an area that we have had a lot of conversation with the board. It continues to be a priority of the governor to expand access to career and technical education. We're working very closely with our CTE directors and also some legislators in really identifying the opportunities to expand access and modernize our CTE funding and delivery model. So really are hoping that that will continue to be a focus as we go into the next legislative session. And we're building off of research that's been done over the last 2 years from both a partnership with the JFO and a consultant and the continued work that the AOE has done with that partner in evaluating and making recommendations. So I think we're in a place where we've done a lot of really good research. We're engaging with folks in the field to make those very clear recommendations. Focused on promoting safe and healthy schools, you heard me really share some of the work that we're doing in that area around chronic absenteeism. That is a major focus for the very reasons that you heard described by the Montpelier-Roxbury School District. Also, we're focusing within that area on school safety. We will be having a school safety conference in the fall again this year, and we're providing a lot of training from national experts on behavioral threat assessments as well for our schools, making sure that our teams in the field have the resources that they need to both be preventative and also to respond when there is an emergency. Related to operational effectiveness, the agency is doing a lot of work in supporting the maximization of grant utilization. You'll hear a lot about that in our next presentation. We want to make sure that we're fully leveraging all the dollars on the table and that those are really being directed in ways that are most strategic to support the academic outcomes and the wraparound needs of our students. So there'll be a fuller conversation around that at the next agenda item. Also, as we think about operational effectiveness, we know that data is central to that. And so you hear me talk a lot about data and our efforts as an agency to continue to improve data reporting. That is a focus. And through this effort, we are looking to improve our accountability tools. So we are rolling out a standards beta test right now that is really looking at the high leverage education quality standards and district quality standards. And through that effort, we're providing some tools and resources. And with everything we do, we're really trying to create some tighter coherence and clarity around what the expectations are and how we can best monitor our progress to see how we're doing and where we need to make course corrections. So data is a really key component of our focus on improving operational effectiveness. And then the final pillar is focused on special education and improving differentiated learning and support for all of our students. This is also a major focus of Act 73, and the Agency of Education has been working with our Special Education Advisory Panel, as we talked about at the last session, to really understand what those unmet needs have been systemically in our system. And we've also formed a policy sprint team focused on special education. Try saying that multiple times. And that includes special education directors, business managers, superintendents, principals coming together and really looking at the data and informing the analysis that we're doing. We will submit a report later this month. And then that team will actually transition to being the steering committee for our strategic plan around this area, this pillar of our work. So you'll continue to hear a lot about planning in this area, and our focus is on implementation. I think what we have really identified is in Vermont, we've put in place the right policies. We've identified the research, and we know what works, including legislation around special education and enhancing Tier 1 instruction and multi-tiered systems of support and early childhood education and extended learning and flexible pathways. We have all of the right policies in place, and our work is really shifting to how do we implement that in a way that's really measurable and with fidelity. So that's a lot of what you'll be hearing about as we're doing our planning. Is it's not just a plan to plan, we're really emphasizing the implementation aspect of that and doing it in partnership with the field. So at that upcoming planning retreat, we do expect to have a session that's going to focus on that vision development. We've been talking a lot about the importance of really setting that aspirational statement that we as a state want to be known as the best public education system in the country, where we give all of our kids roots and wings. And we've kind of talked about that individually with you, and that framework's been really interesting. I think we heard that today too. The roots being really our strong values in history and agriculture and giving back to the community, and also giving kids wings to explore a variety of different flexible pathways. So we're going to be soliciting some input also from students around what that means to them. And we'll be working together on that at this planning retreat. And then we'll break out into different sessions where we can really get deeper into all of these content areas. We're inviting every supervisory union, supervisory district, and school district to bring in teams. So there'll be an invitation that will go out later this week as a save the date. But last year we kind of were able to travel all across the state doing a listen and learn. This year we're bringing everyone together to really do focused planning, and we're looking forward to it. I think it'll really help to shape a strategic plan that is grounded in the priorities of our state, and also will help us to move forward in ways together to tackle some of our biggest challenges. So I'll share more details, but really do hope that that board members participate in that, and we'll give you more details around that, because a lot of the recommendations that will be coming forward to you in December and thereafter will be directly informed by the work that we're doing at that planning retreat. So more to come on that. We're looking forward to the opportunity. Any questions for me?
That was a lot.
We're staying busy.
Yeah. Caleb?
I guess it's not a question, more like a comment, but is there, if any, plan to get the home more involved in
Yes.
education in general? Because not only is that a personal priority, as we talked about in our
Yes.
meeting, but also, I mean, we saw it today with Montpelier and how we're looking at chronic absenteeism, and that was one way that they really cracked down on that, was looking at, okay, let's get down to the home and say, how can we help them?
Absolutely.
And not just the student, because it's really just getting everyone involved. I think that's a key in education.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I think absolutely, in all of those areas that we're focusing on, it's necessary that there's that deep engagement with the caregivers and the larger community. This work around really ensuring that we have the best education system and we're meeting the needs of every student requires all of us to work together. And I think that's school, that's health partners, that's community partners, and absolutely it means families. And so one of the things we really have to be thoughtful about is how we're making our messaging really accessible to families, and how we're, as it relates to academics, how are we making sure that we're giving families and caregivers, information that's understandable so they can evaluate how their progress that their student is making and support them. On that front, we're providing some additional resources for parents. So we've released some information around early childhood education standards. It's being shared through our libraries all across Vermont, and we will be sharing a literacy parent toolkit very soon. So we're working on that. And then related to chronic absenteeism, I think absolutely. And the approach that you heard described today from this school district around really being a partner in the work is important, and really asking the right questions so that as an entire system, community, we can engage the right partners to support the student and family, making sure that kids are getting to school. So I couldn't agree more. Absolutely, it's important.
It sounds to me a lot like what the agency is trying to do on a statewide scale is it's very similar to the community schools model.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what is the status of the community schools, and is that really what you're trying to accomplish? Because like the whole community schools, like the pilot grant, I thought was a fascinating way to approach education, where you're not just looking at the student, but you're looking at the whole family and in the community and the supports that you need. So I'm curious.
Yes, I think as the board is familiar with, my background in training is really around place-based education, and understanding that schools are situated within a community context, and the importance. I've done a lot of research in all my career around facilitating that collaboration between school and community, because we know that that strengthens the supports available to students. And all of this is centered around how do we meet the full needs of the students. So it was clear to us when we engaged in our Listen and Learn that Vermonters really believe and value a whole child education. And that means that we really have to take a holistic approach to the way that we're designing and supporting our system. It also means that we have to be really clear about where we have expertise and where we need to partner. And so our expertise as an agency of education is within education, right, and providing that support. And then we partner in key areas to ensure that we are being really thoughtful and understanding other expertise and support that needs to come in. So that looks like partnering with the UVM pediatric department and partnering with Agency of Human Services on areas where we may not have the expertise, but we have the connection to schools, and we are being really intentional about creating those through lines so that we're doing all the work in a way that's intentionally leveraging supports and resources where they live now, understanding that there's limitations of resources. But yes, it absolutely is. This approach is grounded in what we heard was really important to Vermont, and we have studied the community schools model in Vermont. It is a small pilot, so it's more of a case study, but I think we've shared with you, some really promising results that are related to reducing chronic absenteeism and also increasing academic performance. So we're definitely learning from that as we're approaching this work. Yeah.
I appreciate you focusing on data to build up on things or improve. I wonder if there is a format, or we're thinking of creating a format, thinking of the multiple standardized assessments we have in our school, which, by the way, the window, if not opening today, it should be open somewhere this week, of window testing. And there are so many standardized tests, and some of which I find overlap as well when we think in terms of literacy. Think of VTCAP, Star Math, WIDA, and the local assessment themselves. Yes. When I think of data to differentiate instruction, and then I have all this data, different standardized tests, and we do not have yet, I have to say yet, a standardized curriculum for all our state to use. Each school function in their own way, or in their own, or pick their own curriculums differently. It makes me think of how could one, if we don't have, of course, a format of how to analyze these multiple standardized tests and produce one document to facilitate data analysis, to differentiate learning. How can we support teachers, school leaders in that aspect to really see the, I'm going to say the right picture? Because someone may do poorly on VTCAP, where they are excelling in a local assessment. And then you name another standardized test where they are maybe excellent and then doing poorly in another one. Understanding not all students may take the standardized test seriously because they see it every year and they get tired of it maybe. I'm just curious whether we have resources, tangible or existent, that are accessible to help with data analysis.
Yeah. So this will be a phased approach. You're calling out that we don't have that systemic approach in place right now where we can really gather all that data. Some of it doesn't come up to the state level and kind of is housed even within the district level or sometimes even within the classroom level. But part of what we're doing is understanding that we do need to take a holistic view of performance, and that it's part of the state's role to provide the right resources, tools, and support to evaluate that so that we all are moving towards accelerating opportunities for every student. So it's going to be a phased approach. So as we talk about, I think I mentioned as part of our strategic planning process, we've realigned our agency and we're thinking about the ways that we can really strengthen our support. So when you look at our school improvement work, it's really being able to pilot some of these newer approaches to triangulate this data and creating new tools to help us have a better and more comprehensive understanding of performance. It's looking at the same time of identifying opportunities to expand and deepen the impact of personalized learning plans and thinking about those from kindergarten to 12th grade and how are we building in some additional academic rigor into that. We are studying some very specific models in districts where with the local assessments also come with personalized pathways for students, understanding how that data is really giving insights that are helping to inform directly the instruction that's ongoing on a weekly basis for students, right? So there's a lot of work, and I'm happy to bring back at the next meeting because I think it's really relevant to talking about all the ways that we're looking to pull this together. And that has to occur at all levels of the system. So what we're designing as we're thinking about our, we have a new accountability team that we have created and they're establishing a broader framework. And when you're thinking about accountability, it's really thinking about the overall timeline around when we're evaluating data, what data we're evaluating to inform what type of support that needs to happen in the system. And then we're looking at it at all levels. So there's a visibility that the state needs to ensure at a district, a supervisory union, supervisory district level, what are some of those early warning indicators that there may be some challenges within the system that we can support, and doing that proactively. And then that whole, I kind of see that as a pyramid, then that data becomes more detailed as you move down to the supervisory union district level, then the district level, then the school level, then the classroom level, all the way down to the student level. We don't right now have an integrated tool for that. I happen to have experience building those tools, so I'm excited about the opportunity for us to shape that and have that evolve. And we're looking at some of the more intensive work we're doing with our targeted schools as a way to learn from that and think about how we can really build that framework, the right tools and support in partnership with these schools, about 25 schools, so that then we can learn to scale that. So all of that's coming together through the work we're doing and aligning our monitoring and accountability systems at the agency. It will take time, but we do have a roadmap for some of the key things we're looking to deliver on. We'll share some of those too in the next presentation as well.
Thank you.
But there's a way to do it, and it's exciting to really have the opportunity to engage deeply, not just with the data, but with teams on the ground on how to use this data to drive improvement.
Quick question. Yeah. Sort of the whole child model has been a model that's been around Vermont for a long time. It's what's made Vermont education special. All going back to Tom Keane in 1990, right? We had educational support systems and educational support teams in the state. And we've had laws and statute around that. Yeah. And if we look nationwide, the community school movement, one of the big obstacles to actually making this work, however, is figuring out the funding side of this, right? And the blending and braiding of funding, but also the shift in costs from health and human services and social services functions, right, to schools. And that's essentially a shift from sort of our general tax ledger to our property tax ledger, right? And so right now we in Vermont, right, we have our instructional spending is relatively flat per student, and our our non-instructional spending has been going up. So I'm curious. I haven't heard any discussion about how are we thinking about blending and braiding funding? How are we thinking about dealing with more synthetic funding systems that don't offload sort of social services costs to the property taxpayers? Can you talk a little bit about that? I just haven't heard about that in the strategic planning work you're talking about.
Yeah, so a lot of that was contemplated too. So you're absolutely right. I mean, when you're talking about this type of approach, there's complexity to that work because it requires the capacity to collaborate. It requires the ability to braid funds. And oftentimes that braiding of funds is occurring across sectors. So government, philanthropy, private business, right? So there's a lot of complexity to doing that work well at scale when you're thinking about our system. So I want to acknowledge that and absolutely feel that. Part of, we had the governor first rolled out the proposal and we started having these conversations around education transformation. We had really done some intentional thought around how might we need to resource the system in order to ensure that each district has the right supports in place to facilitate that type of a work from the district perspective. And within that model, we recognized that there was a need for additional mental health support, at least right now, while the healthcare system is kind of strengthening, right? So we thought about that. We thought about what would be the need for a community schools type coordinator position being available, what type of counseling services, right, would need to be identified. And so I think as we know, the funding component is still evolving, and there's going to be another study to really understand all of the inputs that need to be considered relative to the outputs that we're expecting to get to that final foundation formula. But I think this is the conversation we should be having so that we're really clear and explicit around what we're hoping to deliver in the new transformation and within the funding, because there needs to be really intentional operational choices made around how we actually are able to deliver a system like this that we're describing. And then to your point, where are those costs coming from and where should they come from? So I think it's the time to have that conversation.
No, I agree with you. I think I was not thinking so much about education funding. I was thinking about the funding for these core operations that used to be funded out of other budgets than education, right? So what you just talked about, the education transformation plan, right, was schools and local property taxpayers paying for mental health counselors, schools, right, those things coming out of school budgets, where historically, right, health and social services have come out of other budgets. And this is one of the implementation challenges that we worked on back in the 90s around educational support system, around blending and braiding funding, not just in the education sector, but across sectors, so that we didn't continue to have this cost shift, right, from the general tax ledger to the property tax ledger. And that's sort of happened in sort of these quiet ways, right? Because again, our instructional spending has been relatively flat, while our non-instructional spending has been going up. So I'm curious, how are we starting to think about in terms of your strategic planning? Like, what is our coordination with our other agencies? What's our coordination with our other budgets?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Like, what does that look like? Because that, you know, I mean, I think there are big questions about whether or not mental health counselors should be funded out of the local property tax, or should that be funded out of the general tax revenues, and should that be funded by other agencies?
Yeah. All the same questions, right? Those are all the right questions, and I think we need to keep having those across the state. When we even recommended that, even at the beginning of last year, it was with an assessment of that may be needed now, but that may not be the place for this cost in the future, right? And in terms of the specific example around mental health. But as you'll see within our strategic plan, each of our divisions is identifying not only the core processes that they're responsible for overseeing, but what are the priorities in order to get us to this future state that we're describing, right? And what you'll notice when our strategic plan is published is great intentionality around the coordination with sister agencies. And so that's true for any program where we have dual oversight, like our universal preschool program, after school programs. It's also true as we talk about school-based Medicaid. So absolutely, we've done the internal work within our agency, right, to get ourselves aligned. And now I'm working with my colleagues at the secretary level to really identify how are we going to bring our teams together in these key priority areas that we share. And make sure that there's clarity around roles and responsibilities, because that can also get challenging when you have dual oversight.
And data. Data's been the big one, right?
Dual oversight, data, and how are you reporting your data, and maybe different methodologies that then create challenges as you're mapping and analyzing it and together. So yeah, that is the next phase of this. But right now it's been really more of the internal work, and then recognizing within each division the prioritization of working with sister agencies. And so it's a lot of partnership with the Agency of Human Services, the Vermont Department of Labor, the Agency of Digital Services also, because there's a lot of data infrastructure pieces that we're working on as around the systems. But that is our next phase. And it'll be intensive, but I think there's the right shared focus that we have currently in the state, and understanding of the importance. And also, you know, while it's been challenging to navigate some of the federal uncertainty and questions around funding, it has also made us be clearer around how we can operate together and maximize our funding. So, yeah, thank you for the question, and could talk about this all day.
Final word, Lyle.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, yeah, what she said. Because I wrote down here, and you'll see it, I wrote down as we were listening to the presentations today, I wrote down Agency of Human Services.
Yeah.
As I was listening to the Harvest program and feeding the community, and we're doing a lot of different things,
yes,
which are all wonderful things. Where's that money coming from? And where should that money be coming from?
Yep.
And I think the education department, as people start pointing their fingers and saying, your budget's gone way up. Well, why has the budget changed? And what additional things are we doing that's causing that? I'm not always hearing math and science and social studies and English. Yeah, but not from you, but I'm hearing it, all these other things we're doing in schools, which are wonderful things. But who should be paying for those? And it sounds like that's a question that's going to be grappled with, so thank you.
Yeah, it's an important question, and it's, we have to also focus on academic rigor. And that is really important, and you're going to see that consistently from the agency. We believe that every student can learn and achieve at high levels, and that requires us to be really clear around those expectations and be able to monitor those and track progress. And then some of these other indicators we're talking about, we know influence a child's ability to be successful, and so they're part of the system. But we want to make sure that academically we're giving them really strong opportunities. So we really need to focus on both, and all of it is in service to giving kids an excellent education where they can not only thrive in school, but that they're ready to be successful after high school with the pathway that they choose.
And a total of other conversation then becomes, how much time is there in the day? Because there's a whole lot that's been added.
More time.
But I think the money thing is important because you brought that up, you know, in the family and the home and you know, what's going on, and I think that's where Tammy's going. And
that's right.
Because I mean, I remember there's things that in the 90s we were, you know, when it was DC, it wasn't DCF, it was whatever, SR, yeah, whatever the.
I'm blanking.
SRS.
Yeah, SRS.
Mr. Iacovoni.
They used to do all this stuff, and now the school's doing it. And then you used to be, oh, we're only going to do kids, and that we did everybody up to 18, and now we're only going to go to 16, and now we're not going to do any of that. And so the schools got stuck with it. And then one of our legislators said you can't say you, but it seems like, you know, the legislature points fingers here that says, you know, you guys aren't doing your budgets well, and then the boards are saying, well, you're giving us too much to do, and it all comes out of the same pocket. I mean, you know, the definition of true Vermont, or someone who works 4 jobs, pays property taxes, and still delinquent, and it's getting really hard because it's not just the property tax, but it's all, if it goes to broad-based tax, it comes out of the same people's pocket.
Right.
And
At different ratios.
no, I understand that, but it's still, I don't look at my property tax alone, I look at my total tax.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think we came to a point in our lives where there is a need to decentralize education. I'm saying this to say, when we talk about mental health, for example, what do we do, or what are we currently doing in conjunction or collaboration with Department of Health? To me, mental health should 100% be managed by Department of Health. But where is the money coming from? I'm not sure fully. Yeah. just as an example.
Yes, I think our take has been, what are the goals that we have? What conditions do we know are required for kids to be successful? And now there is the question around how that's funded. I mean, I think that's a lot of the piece with the work we're doing with our sister agencies and thinking about, you know, who owns certain grant resources, for example, how those are funding staff. Like all of that is important to the conversation, even outside of the work that's happening with foundation formula. So just absolutely saying it is complex, and this is a collective approach in order to deliver on this expectation and promise to kids.
Flexible pathways for Department of Labor right there.
We're working with the Department of Labor too, yeah.
So let's leave it there. This is going to be a continuing conversation.
Absolutely.
Lots of really good points, though, and I think this has been a really productive conversation for us to engage in.
And our hope too is for the planning retreat, we're able to get deeper, right? I think there's opportunity in this forum to be able to share some updates, but that's why we're really looking forward to that chance to really be in conversation, look at data, really come up with some ideas and considerations. So.
Just to clarify, is that a retreat that's just AOE? Is that a statewide retreat? Is that something the board will be involved in?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would love for the board to be involved. It's a statewide retreat. Every SU and SD is invited to bring a team to the retreat, and we'd like to invite the state board as well to be actively engaged in that planning. Yes.
November 4th.
November 4th, Killington. We'll have an update at the end of the week. I saved the date for you.
That's a Tuesday, right?
It is a Tuesday. Yeah. It was, I will tell you, there's no great date.
Nope.
So, but we didn't want to miss the opportunity.
Well, let's pause there for now.
Okay.
I think it'd be great to come back and have the next maybe after the November retreat, it'd be fun to have a follow-up conversation.
That'd be great. And to share your reflections too from the planning. That'd be wonderful.
Okay, so next up, we have a federal programs update. This agenda item, I think it came up last month, and Zoe had offered to have a presentation by the agency on different federal programs and the agency's role. And I think I'm remembering correctly that this is sort of part one, and next month we're going to have a deeper dive on special education.
That's correct. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. And as the team is coming up, just to appreciate this chance to provide a deeper dive. Over the last several months, I've shared in my secretary's updates a lot of developments as it relates to funding. And I think it was clear in our conversations that it would really be beneficial to just take a step back and talk about the different programs, the role of the Agency of Education, how the money flows, where the flexibilities are within these programs, and their intended outcomes. So this presentation will touch on a part of special education, but the deeper dive would be next month. So with that, I will turn it over to our Deputy Secretary to do introductions.
Hi folks, Jill Campbell, Deputy Secretary and also Chief of Operations for the Agency of Education, and joined by Ann.
Hi everyone, Deputy Chief for Assessment and Accountability, and formerly Director of Federal Programs team. So,
Karen.
And I'm Karen Abbott, and I work. Sorry. Sure. Can you hear me now?
I'll project that.
Hi, I'm Karen Abbott, and I work for the agency in the Grants Management Division, which is one of the new divisions earlier.
So I'll just provide some introductory remarks and then you'll largely hear from Karen and Ann, a little bit from Zoe today. First, I'm just going to take the privilege of saying that it's super fun to see all these students here. My kids are in the Montpelier Roxbury system. You got to hear from two of my favorite small humans when we were speaking with Lena and Bailey. We got to see them out in the hallway. That was great. So it's very proud of them. All right, so what we're going to cover today is very high level. Purpose of federal programs in public education, how it is, there we go, how it is that we receive the funds, how do districts utilize those funds, but then also how does the agency sort of utilize the requirements that come with those federal funds in terms of our own accountability framework. We'll also talk about the agency's federal grants administrative responsibilities, the financial process, how do things flow from the Department of Education to the Agency of Education and then to local education agencies. So that's your supervisory unions and districts and your CTE centers. In federal parlance, that's the LEA. So that's a new acronym we're going to break out today. Just a very quick wave tops look at the different federal programs, funding programs that we manage, how the agency is positioned to maximize federal funds to support student outcomes, and then finally look at some of the uncertainty at the federal level around this kind of funding landscape. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Karen to kind of lead us through this landscape.
And I'm going to kind of fly through this presentation because we have a limited amount of time and we want to offer you the opportunity to ask any questions. So if at any point you would like us to come back and give you more deep dive into any of this, certainly is a possibility. So generally speaking, the purposes of the federal education programs, the purposes of federal programs in education, this money represents about 10% of the overall school's budgets. It's intended to close the achievement gaps, especially for those students who are high needs or disadvantaged. It protects the rights and opportunities of particularly vulnerable students, such as English learners, migrant students, students experiencing homelessness. It ensures equitable access to educational opportunities for students with disabilities. It promotes college and career readiness, including workforce development. It promotes adult education and literacy. And one of the important caveats to remember, and especially when we're talking about funding, is the intention of these federal funds is always to be supplemental and not to replace the state and local funds. Specifically, I'm going to run down through the AOE's responsibilities for administering federal funds. We manage and assure, we manage assurances, so we make sure that the 750 pages of law that comes out that says thou shall is met, both by the SEA and the LEA. We oversee the allocations, so we'll talk a little bit more about how the money flows, but essentially we come and calculate out what the entitlement is for each of the local education agencies. We provide technical assistance for both school districts and those applying for the funds. A big piece of our work focuses around monitoring and compliance with state, federal regulations, and specifically around what are allowable and what is needed to show that you're eligible for the funding. Sorry, my computer is, there we go.
Oh, mine too.
It just glitched, like, oops.
Experiencing the same glitch. There we
So
go.
we
we go.
review and approve budgets, amendments, and reports that are submitted by the grantees. This is a responsibility that encompasses the entire year. These aren't a one and done representation of a piece of work. So both the LEA and the SEA staff spends most of the year applying for these funds and reviewing these funds. One of the things that we are trying to do a bit better job with is this tracking of spending and utilization of funds. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. We conduct risk assessment, and that is a part of our monitoring protocols to ensure that we are seeing the districts that are struggling the most and helping them with whatever situations that they're in to meet the objectives of the grants and the regulations. We coordinate training and professional development. I did it again. Support a program evaluation. Administer state level funds, so there's set-asides in many of these where we determine that there is a state need that we are going to fund, so we set aside those funds and administer those separately, which enables a larger swath of individuals to take part. Collect and report out data. Every dollar requires a data set to the federal government. We ensure compliance, and many of the funding sources have what we call a maintenance of effort, that is to show compliance with that these monies are essentially supplemental in nature. They're not substituting what that local budget is supposed to cover. Sure.
I think what's important here is again, the federal dollars are only about 10% of the overall state education sort of funding ecosystem, but all of these activities that Karen just delineated really form the foundation of a lot of the work of the agency and the work of the districts, right? It is the place, as Karen was pointing out, where we have federal requirements that require districts to perform certain activities to protect their most vulnerable students or to serve them or to try to close the achievement gap. A lot of our federal reporting requirements, the reams and reams and reams of data, there's I think 300 separate data points that we collect, are tied to the federal funds. So even though the proportion of the funding is small, the impact in terms of sort of accountability and support for the districts and the work that happens in schools is actually quite large and is sort of foundational to a lot of the work that's done in the agency.
Sure.
What percentage of the agency's staff is federally funded? And let me flip that around. If we were to lose all federal funding, how many agency staff would be unfunded positions?
There's very few of them that are full FTE. So we've done an analysis of this, and actually as part of our reorganization, yes, we did that. As part of our reorganization, we're actually evaluating how folks are funded. I think it ended up being, oh my gosh, do you remember?
Around 40, wasn't it? But that could be.
That was partial.
Yeah.
But I think full FTEs, it was about 14. Like if we actually condensed it all.
How many staff?
180.
Over 180.
Yeah.
I just want to give you a sense, very broad strokes again, how money flows through the agency. So with particularly federal funds. So the SEA receives a grant award from the U.S. Department of Education. Then we take that grant award and we do some calculations to determine an allocation, and that's based on, regulatory regulations. That then we load that allocation into a grant application. They apply through the application to us. We give them an award, or what we refer to as a GAN, a grant award notification. Then they conduct allowable activity around what they've asked for in the application. They then submit a reimbursement request to us for those activities. We in turn pay the LEA, and then we turn around and seek reimbursement from the federal government as to what we refer to as a drawdown. How many more times I'm going to do that? Okay, so now we are literally going to fly through these just to, for time's sake. I just want to give you a sense of the magnitude of the federal grants and what their purpose is and the amount of them. So in each of these slides, we're referring to federal fiscal year 25, and that is the grand total for the aggregate for the state. So Title I, Part A, some grants we call an actual name, and some of them we refer to as title, regardless, because the name is about 20. Right. So the intention of this money, many of you have heard of this, I'm sure, is for that school-age population to ensure that those children can have a successful, high-quality education and close those achievement gaps. Title II is our next grant. Why do we keep getting blank slides? Okay. Am I doing it? Oh. Title II's intention is to provide professional development for teachers to be able to provide high quality education. That's all really short of all of that. Huh? Title III is to help support English learners or immigrant students and youth, both obtain English proficiency, but also to be academically successful. Title IV. Title IV is a kind of a catch-all to a certain extent. It is to improve student academic achievement, but it does it through 3 buckets. One is well-rounded education, the second being student safe and healthy conditions, and the third being digital literacy. So there's a lot of opportunity with that one. It's not very narrowed. And then we have Title IV Part B as opposed to Part A. And this is the money that comes through the state that supports comprehensive, high-quality after-school and summer programming. Yes, that's our
uses. We all had to learn what Title IV Part B was this year.
Because no one refers to it as Title IV Part B. And then we have migrant education, and this is exactly what it sounds like. This is for the families who come in for migratory work in the state, so that those students are successful. These funds can go to a school-age child or an out-of-school youth, which is a little bit unique for this pot of money, but focuses around that seasonal agricultural occupations. McKinney-Vento is is the name of the law that helps to serve the homeless children and youth in the state. And again, this can serve out-of-school youth, but it is to identify and address barriers for them to be academically successful. How many more do we have?
Like 3.
Wow. The next one is IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Act. We have 2 components to this act, and one just serves the younger population, but it is to provide what is needed to help students be provided their fair and appropriate education.
Karen?
Yes, please.
It might be worth pointing out that so far of the ones that Karen has explained, only McKinney-Vento is a competitive grant.
Oh, great point. Thank
Yeah,
you.
meaning that there are formula allocations to school districts for all the others based on federal rules, but in terms of McKinney-Vento, they actually have to apply to us and through a competitive process for that funding.
But the McKinney-Vento services in general can be served by the Title I dollars. So even if a district did not receive a McKinney-Vento grant specifically, they're still entitled, required by law to provide services that are needed to those students. So the next one is Perkins, and Perkins threw a 5 in there for me, so that must be their official title. But generally speaking, these are, again, formula funds, and they are for regional career and tech centers, and one post-secondary organization, which is CCV in this case. And then we have adult education and literacy, and it kind of says it in the title what this one's about, but there's different buckets of funding here. So they also refer to themselves as Title II, so this gets a little complicated because this is in a different part, the Workforce and Innovation and Opportunity Act as opposed to ESSA. But this is for students to receive their diploma and or GED. All right, I ran through those, so I just want to pause for a second and give you all the opportunity to ask any questions for any of those.
Receive other federal grants. These are the grants that are sort of traditional. These are the ones we almost always receive. Obviously, times are unusual right now. But for example, during COVID, we had about $500 million worth of various COVID funding programs that the agency was managing. In addition, the Stronger Connections grant, which was to support student mental health and well-being. And on occasion, we will also apply for grants, child nutrition grants.
Project Aware.
Yeah, Project Aware, which is, again, student mental health and well-being. One of our challenges as a small state in a small department, and the same challenge actually applies to our districts as well, is we are challenged sometimes to be competitive at the national level because we are competing against states that have entire grant writing teams, right? So we're trying to think about how we can kind of build that capacity and resource within the agency, but this is also something perennially that our districts really struggle with. They're not well positioned to compete nationally with larger districts, but we tend to do well when we apply for these grants, but it is a big kind of resource drain for us, and then we have to manage them, right? And what you've seen is that running these federal grants is never as simple as, oh, we build a grant application and send out funds, right? It is an entire cycle of, planning, training, awarding, reviewing, monitoring, evaluating, and then all the way back around to planning. So this is work that is year-round, kind of never-ending work for a good chunk of the agency.
To understand what the role of the state's ESSA plan is and sort of what the cyclical nature of that is. Yep. And also, even though the agency doesn't administer the Medicaid dollars, have Medicaid reimbursement in schools works in the state.
We actually do have the school-based health services is administered at the Agency of Education as well. So that's
but also for special education, right? Those dollars. Mm-hmm. It might just be helpful for folks to understand that.
Yeah, so there's also other federal programs that we didn't include here because the list could go on and on. We'd be here all day. So, for example, child nutrition funds are administered by the Agency of Education. We have an entire child nutrition team. We actually leverage those dollars to support our universal meals program. So we really take advantage of those federal dollars. In addition, the school-based health services is a Medicaid program that is specifically for Medicaid eligible children. Traditionally, it's been used to support students on IEP, but there is actually an expansion of that, and we're looking at ways to modernize that entire program. Those funds can then be reinvested by the districts for a variety of uses, and we find that they're being used for after-school programs and a whole other kind of host of programs that can support student mental health and well-being across the whole system. So there are all of these other kinds of programs that we leverage as well. Jennifer, did you have a question?
Yeah, and you may get to this at the end of the presentation, but I'm curious to know the status or the future of these.
Yep.
Given shifting priorities
Yes,
at the federal level.
Upcoming, yeah.
And just to respond to the question about the ESSA state plan, every grant that the federal government puts out requires a plan before the first awarding of the funds. And every time the law is reauthorized, so ESSA is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, most recently reauthorized as the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015. So then every state had to write a plan about how they were going to meet all 500 pages of requirements in that law. 700, sorry. But every grant has a similar plan, every child nutrition grant, every education grant. And then you have to update that. If you change how you're doing anything that you said you were going to do, then you have to go through an amendment process with the Department of Ed, which we have done now several times since we submitted and had our first ESSA plan approved in 2017. And that is on the website if anybody cares to read the very voluminous ESSA state plan.
It
Yes.
is. It's extremely. Do we have any intention of applying for any amendments or waivers under the new guidance and sort of flexibility that's coming out under Ed?
It's something that we're exploring. So as the team for accountability is understanding what level of flexibility that we may want to pursue. In terms of amendments, we have submitted a number of amendments over the last year, and that was really in response to some of the findings from our U.S. monitoring visit that occurred last summer and into the early fall to make sure that we are in compliance with key areas and taking that opportunity to make some improvements. But to your question, we have not yet. But that is an area as we look at, there's some flexibility with how we administer assessments, for example. There's some pilot projects that states are doing that I think is something we're exploring as part of the broader plan. And then there are efforts we're at a time where we need to update our federal plan. And so as part of that work, it's evaluating what sort of revisions or refinements we want to make to the actual performance indicators that are in alignment with the strategic plan that we're describing. And Anne and her new role is taking leadership around accountability more largely. That has been kind of obviously it's a shared responsibility because there's oversight under a lot of different teams, but we're really strengthening our support in this area and also providing some additional background knowledge around team members for what is included in our ESSA state plan. So it is absolutely an important document.
Do we have any intention to apply for additional flexibility under ESSA to use public dollars for private school tuition and vouchers, such as what Oklahoma and Iowa and other states are applying for?
Yeah, I don't know that the state of Vermont knows that that's a fit for us yet. A lot of states are waiting for further guidance to see if that's going to be applicable and in kind of alignment with I think some of the objectives that have been outlined within Act 73 around strengthening our public education system. So we're going to look for more details. And like everything, if there's a new program coming out, we're really going to evaluate that impact to understand the potential benefits or drawbacks with any program that we would review. And you're seeing that a lot of states haven't made a decision there. I mean, I think a lot of states are waiting to understand more information around
so it's on the table that we could apply to use federal funds for vouchers to go to private schools?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Because I heard you say that. I thought I just heard you say that was something that you hadn't decided on yet.
We don't know if that program is a right fit for Vermont. part of, as you know, within the discussion is that the dollars could potentially be used for public school students too. So anything we do.
Well, the
would be
dollars
about-
right now have to be used for public school students, right?
to be evaluate what potential impact. I think we have a very clear framework within Act 73 around the intent of how we're strengthening our system. So any sort of new program would need to be able to help support that.
We do apply for and have carried an EdFlex waiver for a number of years, and that enables us to waive anything except for the 10 things that we can't waive.
Yeah.
With regards to making these funds as flexible as possible for districts.
And just to clarify, those 10 things only apply to the title dollars. They don't apply to IDA dollars. There's nothing in IDA that can be waived.
Right, it's an EdFlex.
Other people may not know that. I just want to be clear that that does not apply to IDA dollars. That only applies to title dollars.
And it certainly doesn't give us the opportunity to say that public dollars can be used for private purposes.
we would
It's
have to
more
we would
about
have to have a
some of-
waiver to do that.
Yeah, what I was speaking of are just waivers to make these funds as flexible as we can possibly do.
Yeah, I think just for the benefit of the board, right, the program that Tammy's references is a new initiative coming out of the federal government. So there's a lot that has not been determined in terms of the rulemaking around how that program would be implemented. So there's just, we don't know if that's going to be a fit for Vermont yet.
Onward?
Yeah.
So one of the things that Zoe mentioned during her presentation was what is the agency doing to help LODs maximize the use of these dollars. And one of the things that we became apparently clear to us was that some of these dollars are being left on the table. Now, when I say that, there were reasons for that to happen, including the influx of ESSER dollars that kind of flooded, the market per se, because they can be used for the same as the title purposes. So this is should not be viewed as this is a consistent percentage that's being left on the table. But you can see from this slide that millions of potential dollars are being what we refer to as carried over into the following year because these are formula grants. And so the agency has been very particular in coming up with a plan to help minimize some of this and help those dollars be better utilized.
And the risk here is they're only allowed to carry these forward for so long before they will actually revert back to Treasury, the federal Treasury, and lose access to them. So
True.
It's really important that we are really monitoring and providing those updates and those trainings and sometimes some cajoling and some phone calls to make sure that the dollars are being obligated, meaning they've committed those costs through a contract or through payroll, that they are seeking those reimbursements timely. Remember, it's a reimbursement system, so they need to be putting those reimbursements in on a timely basis, and then we can draw down the funds. One of the things that we experienced with the ESSER funds is that the prior administration had offered what was called a liquidation extension that allowed both districts and the state to be able to extend their use of these funds. There was sort of a realization that the impacts of the pandemic on school-age children were really going beyond just the period of performance for those funds. The impact of the new administration is that they reversed course on that decision, and it really was at the discretion of the Secretary of Education. So we had a certain number of districts that were caught in the in-between of not having sought those reimbursements timely, so that we hadn't been able to draw down all of our funds. So it was a good lesson for all of us in really effective grants management to fully utilize these funds, because the reality is that under the sort of new administration, there is a higher degree of uncertainty than in times past. And that reversal has been something we've been managing our way through for months now, and it's still not resolved.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Is it okay if Cynthia asks a question first? She had her hand up. Yeah, thanks.
I'm just curious about the districts and their capacity to manage grants.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you carry that forward, if there isn't a capacity at the district level, are you seeing equitable distribution of funds
or inequitable distribution of funds and services and programs that aren't in some districts because they don't have the capacity to manage grants.
So all of our districts, and I'll let the team speak to this as well, all of our districts are required to have a business manager. Depending on the size of the district, they may have assistant business managers or grants managers, so they may actually have some additional folks. What I would say, two sort of larger system level observations. One is that we tend to have a high level of turnover in those key positions, and what you lose is institutional knowledge. And so you have new business managers having to come in, particularly in, say, supervisory union constructs. They're also having to build multiple budgets.
Yeah.
There's a lot for them to do,
Right.
and we tend to have somewhere between 20 to 25% of our business managers turnover every year. So that's a quarter every year where they're having to rebuild all of that knowledge, and so that's an impact, and we do tend to see, it's grants management is a place where we can get an insight on what's happening in a central office. That might be a signal to us that we need to provide additional support. The other observation I would make is that when it comes particularly to those competitive grants, districts that have not built out that capacity to go after those grants tend to struggle. And we do proactively reach out to those districts where we know, like, they would be under our priority metrics, they would be a high priority district, right? But for a lot of different sort of institutional and systemic reasons, they might not be applying for those grants. We kind of all sort of share a short list of those districts, and we do a lot of touch base and outreach with them. But I would say that's a persistent equity issue, and is an area where I think there's kind of improvement both at the agency level and in the districts, because we have some of our highest needs districts are not availing themselves of those resources. We have other high needs districts that are amazing at availing themselves of those resources. So there's a disconnect.
And that's what I've noticed when I'm working with different districts, and then the amount of programs that they're offering students outside, that are really robust in certain districts, and then other districts that just don't have those resources. And I was wondering if it really can go back to if they have the capacity to manage grants or not.
Yeah, I think that there is some real issues there. I mean, we have our teams will be making those phone calls, having those meetings. This is what you need to do to access those. But some of our districts that are most under pressure are the ones who are least able to go after those funds. So you're pointing to something that's a persistent issue for us.
Yeah. It might be worth mentioning that the district quality standards, which are going out in beta test in a week or so, are intended partly to address what you're talking about. So there is a section within DQS for the first time on grants management, and Karen and I had worked a lot on developing the components of the rubric for grants management, that this is a sort of a back office operation that is undergirding so much else within the an effective district.
Which goes down to student performance,
which
right?
goes down to
opportunities.
school performance, student performance, everything. So it's one of a number of sort of back office financial operations, but grants management and effective improvement planning to tie your grant uses to identified needs are also in the DQS and the EQS rollout. So yeah.
And the next slide.
Tammy, did you have a?
Yeah, and just Bill, you mentioned that the priority is trying to make sure people are stepping down. And so that actually made me wonder, do we have a problem with districts not spending down their money? Have we returned title funds or IDA funds?
That's what this table is demonstrating, yes.
And we shouldn't say returned funds, because this is intentionally listed as unobligated. These are not a reversion of funds listed here, but if you want that.
Have we had reversion of funds?
Yes. Funds continually roll.
No, yeah.
So we're every September 30, whatever, we get a notice of what funds are expiring the next day and will revert.
Outside the COVID dollar, what percentage of our federal funds have we reverted back to the federal government?
We're actually, Tammy, we can follow up with you on that, because we just got our reversion notice and we're actually digging in on every single one of the grants right now. I think bigger concern is not statewide what that percentage is, but we tend to have some districts that are
No,
struggling.
I agree with you. I was just trying to get a sense of where we
differentiated, I would
were.
say. Yeah.
I think there's two separate pieces, right? So for this, when we're looking at unobligated, is more thinking about, are we being as strategic as possible, right, with the use of the dollars and being thoughtful early on, as opposed to drawing it down, right, late in the cycle. And then to your point, Tammy, there's kind of the another impactful data point, which is the actual reversion. And so we can follow up with you on that, and the breakdown.
The thing that just concerns me about reversions is that that's what they're looking at Ed right now to make decisions about whether or not federal funding needs to go back out to states and districts.
Yes,
share that
exactly.
concern.
We share that concern. And so part of what you're hearing too, and we'll reinforce this around the realignment, that's why we've had a team focused on grants management.
And this isn't representative of any reversion here. So these
Is this
funds,
unobligated?
Yeah, these are just unobligated. So they have an opportunity to obligate these funds up through September 30, 26.
And this is 1% of the budget, if I'm doing my math right. So 10% of our budget is federal money. This is 10% of that. So it's really, we've got 1% of our total education budget unobligated.
That's about right.
So we need to obligate it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the
They can't spend it if they don't obligate
And
it.
to Tammy's point, particularly in our current federal environment,
Right.
we need to show that we are utilizing every penny of this money. I would say with the ESSER dollars, the districts did a pretty extraordinary job of obligating and using those dollars. And the agency, that's when we were making phone calls. We were tracking that very closely and following up with folks and making sure that every penny of that was obligated and drawn down to the greatest extent
And all
possible.
those areas are important areas.
They are
so
really
I-
important areas, yeah. All right. Yeah, and Zoe, you have the next one.
Great, because I was going to follow up on another question. Tammy, you had asked about an overview of the positions at the agency that are federally funded. So we've done analysis of this in a couple of different ways. And so I want to make sure that I'm pointing you to the right resource that has the comprehensive list. The redistricting task force had very similar questions around capacity at multiple levels of our state system. So I'll share with the board after this meeting that tool and point you to the direction where you can see the breakdown. What I would put forward that I was looking at it now is that it's not broken down by program and source of funding, and I think that's also helpful as we're thinking about the level of kind of certainty.
Actually, it's going to be one of my next questions.
Yes, so I'm with you. I'm with you, Tammy. I think we have a follow-up meeting scheduled soon. But so I hear your question, and I think that the data that's available now will partially answer your question, but not fully. And so we can circle back on that. Okay, so the next part is really dovetails nicely from our conversation just now. Our goal as we're doing our strategic plan and realigning our focus is to maximize the use of every dollar. It is incredibly important for us to do that early from, do we need to let someone in? Or, okay, thank you, Andrew. From a strategic vantage point, right? So what you're seeing within the agency is not just talking about what's an allowable usage of that fund, but how are we making sure that we're equipping our districts with the right resources and tools to be strategic around how those dollars are being leveraged to reach their academic goal. And so just to the conversation we're having, it's really to be more strategic with the dollars and to prevent any return of those dollars to the federal government. So with this in mind, the grants team has already made some enhancements to our reporting. We're providing quarterly grant utilization reports. They are not required to submit that quarterly, but it is an incentive to try to get that those reimbursements clear. We're providing training sessions on the strategic budgeting, so really again thinking about that whole life cycle and making sure we're being really timely with analyzing the data we have to make these important decisions. So that's a really shared responsibility of grants and then our regulatory compliance team, which sits within finance. And again, all of this is around maximizing the use of these funds and also looking at the federal flexibility. So the team can talk a little bit more about that, but where possible, how we can leverage our authority as an agency to allow for those flexibilities to ensure that those dollars at a district level are being used where they are most needed. In terms of accountability levers at our disposal, it's related to programmatic and general assurances that those funds are being used as intended through law. And so there's some additional monitoring oversight that we provide there. We do continuous improvement reviews, really again, to ensure the alignment of those dollars related to both their allowable usage, but also to the strategic priorities of that district. We provide grant application reviews. We're also, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, looking at ways to enhance our support to our identified schools. And through that process, really being intentional on developing a refined tools reporting process that can be scaled across all of our schools, and improving also the monitoring of both financial and programmatic work. We have had great intentionality at the agency of breaking down silos. And so building that bridge between how things are, between the finance and the programmatic piece is a really critical aspect of our work and of our planning that's been happening over the last year and will continue moving forward. And then related to the quality standards, we mentioned those. We have a beta test underway now, and that's really those high leverage education and district quality standards, how we're going to be able to monitor those effectively, along with enhancing a lot of reporting. You hear me talk a lot about data, and with that is creating some additional dashboards and resources that are going to be, one, more timely, but also more relevant for planning in the field of different levels. We do have an appropriation from Act 73 to bring on some consulting services to support our transition work, and a big component of that is actually helping to develop enhanced dashboards and tools. So we're very much looking forward to that, and we're being thoughtful around capturing data that's both academic and non-academic, so that we have a complete and comprehensive view of the overall wellness of our system, and as I talked about, at multiple levels, right? So at the agency level, SU level, district, school, classroom, student.
So we're wondering about reporting to school boards. Yeah. Will those dashboards be something, I'm thinking as a prior school board member, you know, that information was never transferred to us. How do you make sure that they know the health of the district based on the strategic priorities that you've set?
We've heard very clearly from school boards that they could benefit from some additional reporting and also benchmarking. And I think you'd mentioned that, Cynthia, in your earlier remarks. Sometimes it can be very isolating within your specific school board because you don't have that point of reference. And historically, as a state, we haven't had that kind of comparative analysis available to the state boards. So when we structured our budget request for the legislature, we included really three areas to focus on. In terms of enhancing reporting. So that's academic indicators, operational indicators, and then there's a separate focus just on board development. And we're really trying to be mindful of how we're bringing that together. It'll take some time to get us to where we want to be with those reports, but the intention would be they would live as dashboards that could be dynamic. So we do have a long way to go, but we've made tremendous progress over the last year and a half, and I think we have the right clarity right now of what needs to happen, and then we're really leveraging these opportunities for public engagement to kind of get really kind of get a gut check around, are these the right indicators to help inform your work? And all of this dovetails with the work we're doing with the DQS and EQS standards too. So where we are is, I think in the past we've had all these tools, right? And I mentioned that we have the right policies in place. We've got a lot of the right rules in place, but we've had really separate monitoring systems, and so that's created some disconnect. And the work we're doing is trying to bring it all together.
And Zoe, to Tammy's point earlier, this also connects to our SSD plan and a future state, kind of overhaul and resubmission of that plan. As I like to say, my colloquialism is that we need to hook up all the plumbing because right now our plumbing isn't hooked up. We have all of these measures and tools and different data collections, but it's not integrated into a whole that makes sense for both school districts to use and school boards to use, but also for like caregivers and and community members to get an understanding of how our system is doing. It needs to be more transparent and understandable and actionable. So not just data. Zoe likes to say that we're data rich and knowledge poor, and so we're really trying to integrate all of this so that it's usable data. All right, you've got a couple more slides.
I do, okay. So just want to highlight how we're organized to support the efficient, compliant administration of federal funds. And I want to be really clear, the compliance piece is important, but we often talk about how compliance is the floor. What we're really trying to do is make sure that we're using these dollars to really support the strategic needs of schools. And so with that in mind, we've kind of mapped out the key areas that we're supporting. So as we look at application reviews and utilization reports, I think that's getting to our earlier conversation. We need to have early and consistent visibility to the drawdown of those funds to make sure that they're being maximized. So we're not at the end of the period of performance and you're just trying to spend a lot of money, right? So that's a really critical aspect. And that involves not just an analysis of spending, but an analysis of how things are spent. So there's a lot of tight coordination that we'll be organizing with the school improvement team too, to see how those dollars are being leveraged to support student learning. Related to technical assistance and training, this is, there's a lot of, you've heard today, it's very technical. And when you take on these grants, there's a lot of requirements that are placed on the districts. It can be quite onerous. And so part of our team's work is to ensure we can help to make that as easy as possible. And that comes with providing very clear training around the requirements. So that's ongoing with the team. And then monitoring is as an aspect of that, right? So we do the application reviews, we're making sure that the dollars are being used, we're providing technical assistance, and then we're monitoring to see how that's working, right? Both in terms of the fiduciary responsibility and the impact on programming. And the fiscal operations piece of this also goes through the whole life cycle from the award of the grant to actually closing out and supporting any audits that are required. So it really is a full service support as we look at administering and overseeing these funds. And we've really been thoughtful in the agency of how we can strengthen our support within our teams to best deliver on our part of the responsibility in having these funds. So in terms of just highlighting how the reorganization will better support our districts with the strategic use of federal funds, I want to highlight a couple key areas. So I've noted a couple times, and I know we've had an opportunity to meet, I've had an opportunity to meet with many of you to talk about how we've created some new divisions within our agency where we're pulling together the right experts across the agency to work in a more coordinated fashion so that they can maximize their impact on the field. And so that comes with the creation of an accountability team, and the accountability team is managing federal and state requirements, and that does include monitoring some of the ESSA corrective action plans that we've put into place that touch a lot of the different divisions in our agency. We're also we're strengthening our school improvement team, really situating that under an academics area so that there's really tight alignment and coordination with the curriculum and instruction experts along with our special education experts. So the school improvement team has existed within our agency, but we're really working intentionally to make sure that we're flexing in the right support and expertise as we're going into schools to meet their specific needs and provide those resources in the field. And then our grants team, you've heard a lot about today. It's really about maximizing the use of those dollars to ensure that those are being used strategically. In terms of actually reviewing grant applications for our identified schools, this is a process where we're really trying to be streamlined in how we're helping administer the gap analysis so that those schools really understand kind of the levers that they can pull in order to make significant improvement, and identifying, supporting them with that process of establishing their clear goals, and based on those goals, how to best leverage the dollars available to them through these other federal and sometimes state grants as well to support that work.
One more slide, Zoe.
One more. Okay.
And then we get to the federal hot gossip over here.
So the next slide is really talking more about some examples of the specific tools and priorities as these teams are working with over the next couple of months. So creation of an equity budgeting tool. Jennifer had mentioned that the Commission on the Future of Public Education had been talking about this. We recognize the need to actually have a tool in place to be systematic in how districts can review those dollars and ensure that there's kind of a fairness to how they're being distributed to get to and target the needs of students who require them most. We're also doing a lot of alignment work around continuous improvement plans. So we've talked about the fact that our monitoring tools have been separate. What does that result in the field? Sometimes that can be overwhelming because there's all these different, plans that they have to create. And so what we're doing is really streamlining that so that we have one major place and source for where they're analyzing their needs, they're establishing their goals, and they're completing their grant applications. We already have consolidated grant applications. We've already made some inroads in kind of aligning templates, and there's some more work to do that we've identified in this area that our school improvement team and grants team will be working on. I've mentioned that we have added some utilization reporting for grants. We are going to be further enhancing that because we've talked about the importance of being able to draw all of those down. And then overall, just, we see our role as an agency and our mission is to provide leadership oversight and support the implementation of federal and state dollars. And so we recognize the need to provide some greater oversight and monitoring and strengthening the engagement that we're having, particularly with our targeted schools. And so that is a strategic focus of the multiple teams here. You can see that's an integrated effort. So school improvement, curriculum instruction, education program teams, and grants teams are all working together on that.
All right, and now we come to federal funding concerns.
And your
So now that you know all of the federal funds and all of the things, now
so
we
these
can talk
concerns
about
have driven a lot of the changes we've made.
Right.
what we are paying attention to.
So the current dollars that we're operating with in schools are federal fiscal year 25 dollars, which are for, education is forward funded by Congress. So money that was passed should have been a year ago, but last spring is funding this school year. And that budget expires 9/30. The funds don't expire, but the budget expires. The new federal FY26 budget has yet to be agreed upon. That's the one that's supposed to go into effect on October 1st. In normal times, and there haven't been normal times in a long time, let's start saying that. It isn't just this current administration. We haven't had a normal budgetary process in Washington in a very long time. But if we were to have a normal budget process, they would fully fund all 12 budget bills that comprise the federal government by October 1 of each year, and the money would flow. But that has not happened. So as we approach with about 2 weeks to go, the House and the Senate Appropriation Committees have each passed separate versions of a help, education, labor, whatever, budget that includes education. They are very, very different. The House version is much more similar to the President's budget request, which came out early in the session, which was around February or March. The Senate budget had surprising bipartisan support when it passed out of appropriations in the full Senate. And there are cuts in the House budget, there are not cuts, there's expansions in the Senate budget. Anyway, they're at kind of an impasse if you've been following the news. So one of three things can happen. Either a miracle happens and the House, the Senate, and the President all get their act together and in 2 weeks they agree to a budget and we're done. Not going to happen. The second is that they agree to a short-term continuing resolution to fund the government for some period of time while they continue to hash it out. And then the third thing is that they fail to agree to either have a budget or a continuing resolution and the government shuts down. So I would have said a week ago that number 2 or number 3 was equally likely this time around. Given the news of the last day or so, I would say that shutdown is increasing in likelihood, but I am not a prognosticator. So either way, we'll either have a continuing resolution that probably carries us another 6 weeks or so, in which case the whole process will repeat again, or we will have a shutdown and they'll still have to finally come to a budget at some point. The primary challenge for us as a recipient of education dollars is that when the government shuts down, only essential operations continue. So the staff that we rely on to process competitive grants, not our normal formula grants, but competitive grants to review, some of the ones you were mentioning.
Except they're not there anymore.
That's also a point. Yes, noted.
Sorry, I just couldn't.
I didn't even hear what she said.
I said they're not actually at the department anymore, but that's.
Well, yeah, so, yeah, what, exactly.
So it's now a perennial issue.
But anything, even like to discuss how we want to maybe revise our estate plan, or to pursue a waiver, as you mentioned, or any of those things that we might have to go to Ed for, they're not going to be there to support us in that. But because we are forward funded, we do not anticipate an interruption in our funding on October 1st. In other words, school districts have already received the FY25 funding, which will carry us through this school year.
So I think that's really important to reemphasize. So they have their funds for the current school year. So while the potential shutdown and the haggling over next year's budget is certainly disruptive and creates a lot of uncertainty, it's really important to emphasize that the October 1 conversation is not about this year's funding. The schools have those funds right now. There's a couple of nasty little caveats in there.
Yes,
but, yeah.
and the nasty caveats are that this will be the second year in a row that, well, more like the fourth year in a row, that we're looking at a desire on the part of certain folks in Congress to cut particular federal programs. That was not successful for the previous 3 years, but each time it's getting a little more likely in our estimation. So those include Title 1C migrant, which Karen discussed earlier, Title 2A teacher professional development, and Title 3A English language education. We are not seeing right now panic that that's going to happen for FY26. As I said, the Senate budget includes funding for all these programs. The House budget does not. So it'll all depend on how those negotiations resolve eventually. But the fact that there keep being proposals to cut funding and they tend to focus on these three programs for political reasons is a concern. And we're monitoring that. That's about what we can do. We work with our delegation on this. We work with our partners in Washington, Council of Chief State School Officers and others. And we take our cue from them who are monitoring moment to moment, congressional and ed, discussions and all. But this is a possibility into the future. The other thing is that neither the House nor the Senate budget drafts currently include the consolidation that was put forward in the President's budget request last spring. So there was talk, if you remember, about keeping Title I and IDA and basically consolidating into block grants, everything else. The current proposals from the House and Senate do not include that consolidation language. So that may still be in the future, but doesn't appear to be on the table for this next cycle. And I'm sure you guys have questions.
And it might be helpful for everybody to understand the difference between appropriations and drawdown, right? Because we had a drawdown problem this summer, right?
Yes.
And so just because there's appropriation doesn't mean there's cash, right?
Right. That's a good point. And that was actually the first time we've ever, there's so many people, everybody says unprecedented about just about everything these days. That was in fact one of those things that was unprecedented, where money that had already been appropriated, in this case, federal FY25 funds for this current school year, that went through 2 continuing resolutions and then a third in March where the budget was finally passed in full to maintain funding at prior year levels. That funding was supposed to arrive on July 1 and then again on October 1. And very close to the end of that process, literally in the case of a few of the grants, like a week before the money was due to arrive, to be allocated to us from the federal treasury, there was a decision appears to be in the Office of Management and Budget to put a hold on all those funds. And so you might remember the chaos that ensued around that. And over several weeks throughout the summer, and a lot of advocacy, legal cases and other advocacy and all, the money did eventually all get released, starting with the 21C, the summer and after school, and then, eventually we got all of our funding that we were supposed to get. And
it was only for certain programs. I think that's important. It wasn't the Title 1A dollars. It was
1A was also
Title 1A was not included.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all of our funding was impacted in one way or another
some more than others, but in the end, and the other thing is that we had already we have a consolidated application, which Zoe had mentioned. So you apply for all of these funds together in one application, and we encourage people to blend and braid those funds in order to use them strategically. So even though we did get our July 1 allocation, we did not get some of the other ones. Right. It was causing trouble because we'd already had folks who, in anticipation of their 2 and their 4 and all, were blending their funds together into school-wide program investments. They could not pull apart and say, oh, we just have the Title I part. Well, now just go forward with Title I, and the application doesn't work like that. And this was a national thing, not just Vermont. So it caused a lot of distress. There was also interruptions with the standard thing of preliminary allocations versus final allocations. There's a process they're supposed to follow. And they did not follow the process in any way. In the current Senate version of the FY26, federal FY26 budget, the Appropriations Committee budget, there is a provision that specifically says that the White House, the executive, may not withhold funds that have been appropriated by Congress, which was a direct reaction to this, but that is not in the House version, for example. So anyway, we are a long way from agreement. We do not know what the final negotiations are going to yield in terms of specifics for individual programs. We are anticipating a shutdown on October 1, and some agreement finally to some period of continuing resolution. How long the shutdown will last, we don't know. It will not impact education funding. I think that's critical. Right now, the funds the schools are using right now will not be impacted by the shutdown. It will more impact our interactions with ed. And that's about what we know today. And it is a constantly evolving situation. So like we could get news tonight that changes that calculus. The other change that has happened is in our Perkins, which is our CTE, and the Adult Education and Learning. Those 2 federal programs have been moved over to the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor. So I asked our teams to kind of talk about what are those impacts that you're seeing. At this point, they're administrative. So it's switching from one system, which is called G5, that we draw our funds down, to a different system. And so our teams are training up on that and how we receive our grant awards and how our team will do the federal drawdown. So at this point, it's administrative, not programmatic in nature. The funds are still accessible. We're able to draw our funds down. We do so every 2 weeks, very diligently right now. Drawing down federal funds is really, really important. So we're going to continue to be monitoring whether or not this results in other changes. But at this point in time, it's purely at the state administrative level that we're feeling the impact, and it's more, just how the funds are flowing and how the grant awards are flowing at this moment in time.
There's one other thing you made me think of that we had in the mix of all of this kind of chaos earlier in the summer, and I don't expect that it will entirely go away in the coming years, which was gets back to your first point about assurances. So we have to, in taking funds, we have to agree to a whole host of compliance with a whole host of federal requirements that are specified in the grant award notices we get. And we, in turn, expect our LEAs to agree to a whole host of compliance-related requirements, federal and whatever state. So in those grant award notices for the programs this year, this summer, there was new language, purposefully new language, particularly in relation to AEL and Perkins and some other programs, and all of that got litigated, examined across Vermont and other states. There was an initiation of some language that was then retracted by ed. That also impacted our ability. We didn't want to use the funds or allocate the funds until it was clear what we were agreeing to in taking those funds. And so in each case, we had to subject each grant award notice to legal review, which we normally wouldn't do, to make sure that there wasn't any gotchas in there that we weren't comfortable with.
There's a significant level of vetting that has gone into the review process over the last year.
Yep.
Of going down to the language of any sort of new legal requirements.
Have we been impacted by the IDA Part D funding?
I'm sorry, the Part D funding?
The cuts
We were
to
not.
IDA.
No, we're not.
We have not, right?
No, we were not one
Okay.
of the named programs there.
I didn't think we were, but.
But
You
somehow.
now have had federal funding 101.
And there's a lot more.
There will be a quiz.
Thank you guys for putting that together.
Thank you all for listening and bearing with us.
It was a long presentation.
Well, it was a good, grounding presentation, which I think is really helpful. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thanks, team.
Hopefully it'll be a boring series of weeks for you.
That's right.
That's what I wish superintendents
is
on calls
boring.
now. I say I wish you a very boring week. And they all
I
say,
haven't had one
"Thank you."
yet.
You too.
Thank you all.
Board members, we are about 45 minutes off schedule, which is fine, because I think these have been like really good and important conversations. Do we need to take a break, or should we just keep on going through? I can use the rest. 5-minute break?
5 minutes.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Let's try to resume at 3:50. Okay, we are back. It is 3:54. And next up, we have our independent school approvals. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you to walk us through. We've got 4 schools that are up for reapproval.
Okay. So taking the order, I think for each of these schools, I will tell you what the recommendation of the committee is. Wait until the end of our discussions to make a motion. So first up is the Greenwood School. And our committee recommends to the full State Board of Education renewal of approval to the Greenwood School, a therapeutic independent school in Putney, Vermont that serves students in grades 6 through 12. The renewal approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. And this approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. Greenwood School is a residential therapeutic school in Putney. It's been operating since 1978. It focuses on language-based disabilities, ADHD, and autism. It serves all boys in grades 6 through 12. They have a total population of 58 students. 12 of them are currently publicly placed Vermont students. They enroll students from multiple states and from multiple educational consultants. They are a NEASC accredited school, and we're asked to submit a couple progress reports post-pandemic to check in on low enrollment budgets to make sure that they were managing financially, and they are. The report notes a remarkable depth and breadth of services. They have a 2-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, average class size of 4. The staff has excellent credentials. It's an exceptional staff. There were, if you read the report, you saw there was some concern about non-compliance and a couple IEPs, but that issue has been cleared up through the district. It wasn't Greenwood's. Greenwood School had tried to clear it up, and it wasn't on their part. It was on the district's part. Now that's been resolved. They are now in compliance. So I'll pause here and see if Cynthia or Lyle, there's anything else that you'd like to add. And we do have members of the independent school team. Anything I left out on that school that you'd like to add?
No, it's
Okay.
a very good school.
Okay, great.
So this is a residential school.
Yes.
So our approval applies to what? The educational portion of this, or are we, right? So and DCF is signing off on the residential component. Who?
NEASC.
Because NEASC is.
So we updated our rules to require that any independent school with a residential program must be accredited by a third party or DCF,
Right.
but it's an or.
Right. I understand that. I think where I always feel a little uncomfortable is the kids are there 24/7, right? So has anybody, like, other than NEASC, how are we evaluating what's going on in that school in the non-academic hours?
Other than NEASC?
Other than NEASC.
I can tell you the oversight during the site review is the agency, Deb Ormsby, independent program manager. We check all the background for BCIC, fingerprinting, and child and adult abuse registry background checks to make sure every staff member, not just the instructional staff, but every staff member has gone through the background check, the full range, and that the documentation is in the professional folders, the personnel folders, I mean, and they are. We aren't at this time, or at the time of the site review, authorized to review the residential program.
No,
That's
I understand.
NEASC's.
Yeah.
But NEASC does. Right, that's right.
But NEASC does.
That's right.
Yes. And NEASC is accredited.
They're the
Yes.
accrediting
Yes.
agency.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I get where we are in terms of rule and statute and accreditation, but I'm just going to be on the record saying it makes me uncomfortable, right, a little bit, because if we think about where we've had problems of abuse, it's usually not during the day program, it's during the residential portion of the program.
But I think it would be good for people to recognize what goes into a NEASC review of a residential program.
Okay.
So it's not just the staffing they review the programming and the safeguards.
Okay.
There's, I don't know how many indicators in the residential life standard there are, but I think there's at least 7, there may be a dozen.
Okay.
Of standards they have to meet to be accredited.
So we've basically
area.
delegated that
Right.
to NEASC.
Right.
But NEASC as an organization is equipped to look at that and to do that evaluation. Correct. And they know what they're looking for, and so it makes sense for us to be able to delegate that.
And it's either delegating it to NEASC or delegating it to DCF. Those are our two options.
Right. Well, who ultimately has responsibility? I mean, when you delegate, it means we're.
Right. So it's
Agency, is it the state board, or is it DACF?
So that would be good to review that for the state board, this committee receives support from the agency. We get our report from the agency. That's where we get the bulk of our information. The agency is the one who takes in the financial records, the NEASC information, and puts it in a report. Our committee's meeting, if there are any questions that we want clarification on, the school is there, the agency is there. We ask the questions at that time, and we have, as you'll hear later in this report, we do sometimes ask for extra documentation where there's a question. So we have the responsibility to approve, to grant approval. So I guess that might be your.
But not for the non-academic part. Like, we're only approving the academic portion here, right? Not the residential portion. That was my first question.
So to the same extent that so I don't know the answer to your question, but I think the answer to your question is no. But I think that we are approving the school, which happens to be a residential school.
Okay. That was what I was trying to. That was my first question.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I think
right.
that's
Like,
true.
are we approving the? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of circling back to my first question.
So any other questions or before I make a motion? So I'd like to make the motion, and I'll read it again from the green sheet, that the State Board of Education grants renewal of approval to the Greenwood School, a therapeutic independent school in Putney, Vermont, that serves students in grades 6 through 12. The renewal approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. This approval is conditioned on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. Is there a step? Do I run this part of the meeting, or do you?
Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Brian, are you still with us? Okay.
There's Brian.
Brian was a yes. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Great. The second school is a school that is not eligible to receive public funds, the Hilltop Montessori School. And so our committee is recommending that the State Board of Education grants renewal of independent school approval to Hilltop Montessori School in Brattleboro, Vermont to serve students in grades K through 8. The renewal approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. And again, this approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, and financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. It's an independent day school in Brattleboro. There are 4 Vermont students who are grandfathered, who are publicly funded students, but the school now, given the statutory change, is ineligible to receive public funds. In the grades K through 8, they have 85 students, but they also have 49 toddlers and preschool students enrolled at their school. Typically, upon graduation, students transition to Brattleboro Union High School, but there's some that also go to various independent schools. It's governed by a board of trustees that has 11 members, mostly current parents, but the school has diversified this board through alumni and even has the former head of Putney School on their board. They run a classic Montessori curriculum. For students with special learning needs, they have a learning specialist that has experience as a special educator. Located on a beautiful campus of 43 acres with 4 buildings. I haven't been there, but agency staff says it's just a beautiful facility, beautiful campus, and a well-run school.
Tom, you read the motion.
No, I haven't made a motion yet.
Okay.
I learned last time, but I'll wait until after the conversations, then I don't have to amend the motion if there is one. But I'll take any questions or comments before I make the motion. If not, I move that the State Board of Education grants renewal of independent school approval to Hilltop Montessori School in Brattleboro, Vermont to serve students in grades K through 8. The renewal approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. This approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. Is there a second?
A second. Tammy seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion as read, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion is unanimous. Thank you.
So the next one is Foundations Upper Valley. And I'll just, this is what our committee recommends, that we grant renewal of independent school approval to Foundations Upper Valley in Windsor, serve students in grades K through 12, renewal approval for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. And again, conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. Foundations has been operating since 2015, 2016. It's a therapeutic school in Windsor run by a parent company of parent organizations, SD Associates, that specializes in intensive behavioral services. SD Associates, like NFI that we've had before, come before the board, is governed by a board of program directors, and the head of school is the liaison to that board. Foundation serves grades K through 12, as you heard, ages 5 through 22. Currently, they have 10 students. They can take as many as 15. 13 is the sweet spot, and they do have a waiting list of students, but they can't hire the direct services staff. The dearth of special educators is significant. They're based in the Windsor Firehouse. They lease that facility. The report mentioned impressive supervisors and a genuinely happy atmosphere where even students who are struggling with significant challenges were really happy in the struggle. It sounds like a great place. There was a time when they were providing more services than were outlined in the IEP, but that discrepancy has since been rectified. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So, I move that we grant renewal of independent school approval to Foundations Upper Valley in Windsor, Vermont, to serve students in grades K through 12. The renewal approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. This approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. Is there a second?
Second. Like how we're mixing it up. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
So this is the next one is a twofold recommendation. Our committee recommends that we grant renewal of therapeutic school approval to Two Roads Academy in Colchester, Vermont, to serve students in grades 5 through 12, and approve an elementary program to be called Horizons in Newport, Vermont, to serve students in grades K through 5. So it's a renewal of an existing program and an approval of a new program. It's an amendment to their application. The renewal approval and amendment approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030, with the same conditions that the school reports to the agency within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. As I noted, Two Roads is a therapeutic school. Currently grades 5 through 12 in Colchester. It's run by Green Mountain Behavior Consulting, which runs a number of programs like NFI, like SD Associates. This new program called Horizons will serve grades K through 5. 7 is the break-even spot, but they are staffing to serve 7 to 10 students housed in a building in Newport. They'll have the same governance board for both the Colchester site and the Newport site, although there is some consideration of increasing the size of the board and splitting the 2 boards eventually as the new school gets going. At the Colchester site, classes were robust and well-structured with high-interest, student-centered, engaging instruction, including student presentations. For the Newport site, they're currently hiring a head of school, behavior specialist, and behavior interventionist. They've already hired their special educator and their gen ed teacher. They have already put forward their plan for compliance with the rules once they get approved. And they do have financial capacity. That was my question. How do we know they have the money to do this? And they supplied tax returns as well as a multi-layered budget that said what the budget would be with 1 through 7 students, 7 being the break even. The parent company through its other programs has sufficient funds to fund this program if they don't hit 7, but they've done a needs assessment in the area. And if it's anything like their Colchester site, they'll draw from a wide area. And so I don't think there'll be an enrollment problem, but they have a plan in place if they if there is, they don't hit the 7 number.
I would like to make a note, Deb Ormsby, Independent School Programs. The reason why this amendment came about is, first of all, Two Roads Academy's reputation as a therapeutic school, but also LEAs in the area up in Newport, Kingdom East, Lamoille North, Lamoille South, and North Country were all seeking or providing requests to Melinda Neff, the head of school, and the organization to open an elementary school program because there's so much need for a therapeutic elementary program in that area. So this was a very thoughtful process on Two Roads' part based on LEA requests and the needs of students and families.
So I know there's a moratorium. And is this because it's the same parent organization?
That's right. It's only an amendment.
Two campuses.
It's an amendment expansion.
Right.
It's not opening a separate or a new program at all. It's an expansion to include grades K through 5.
Right.
Okay.
At what capacity in terms of ratio, staffing?
Melinda probably should be the one to answer that question, although I could answer it. Melinda's online if you'd like to take that question, Melinda. The question...
Yes, and I'm assuming this is for the Newport location.
Yes.
Yeah, so our student to teacher ratio would be 7:1 as well as special ed. The behavior interventions that they'll hire will largely be determined by the IEP team, of course, based on need, but we will be looking to serve kids if they needed one-to-one. So it would be very well supported in that way.
Thank you.
Other questions? Then I'd like to make a motion that we grant renewal of therapeutic school approval to Two Roads Academy in Colchester, Vermont, to serve students in grades 5 through 12, and approve an elementary program to be called Horizons in Newport, Vermont, to serve students in grades K through 5. The renewal approval and amendment approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. This approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. Is there a second?
I'll second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion is carried. And I just want to thank Tom and Cynthia and Lyle and the agency and the schools. I mean, I know that there has been such a backlog of schools that have been waiting to be reapproved for a very long time. And it's clear that there's been a lot of prep work going into, this point where we are right now, being able to approve the school. So I just want to recognize, I know there's a lot of work, and thank you guys.
Thank you for that. I just want to commend the team for their work. Thank you very much for the independent school team.
I just want to put a plug for the independent school team, if you don't mind, but to address the backlog, I'm very pleased to announce that we have 10 confirmed site visits scheduled for the month of October. And we have invitations out, not for the same number in November because of Thanksgiving break, and we'll be scheduling probably the same number in December as November because of the Christmas break. But we're well underway, and I'm taking lots of vitamins to get rested and ready.
Thank you. Lyle?
Just I want to continue the shout out to agency staff. It's a pretty regular occurrence to see emails that we get as a committee thanking the staff for their support. It's a regular occurrence, and they appreciate the professionalism and the feedback that you provide to them, and it's very quick, and so just we feel that there's a genuine feeling of respect that goes back and forth, and so thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. All right. Okay, future meeting planning. I will forecast, we've had a delightful lull these past few months. Maybe not so much at the agency, but from the board's perspective. I do think we are going to be getting busier because we've got some December 1st deadlines. We have council that will be coming on board to be able to help us because we have another December 1st, 2026 deadline in terms of looking at the rules and, really figuring out with the agency what makes sense for the board to keep and do and what makes sense for the agency to keep and do. So we're going to start having some active conversations about these issues. So at least for right now, I think October, I'll go through what's on my list, but I think it's really in November that we're going to start seeing things picking up and lots more committee activity that will be reported out. So just want to put that out there. But for October, here's what's on my list: commission update, secretary update, committee updates, independent school approvals, a follow-up presentation from Zoe about special education, and you had a report that was due that I think you're
we can walk through the report.
Great. And then are we doing a follow-up presentation on federal programs, or did we get through that today?
I think what we described was that second focus would be specific to special education,
okay.
and there's a lot of analysis within the report. And then I'll call out, you'll find when we walk through this, that we've identified additional areas of inquiry that we will be reviewing in a subsequent report as well.
Okay. And then Zoe will also, I think, start bringing some preliminary conversations around graduation requirements, if there's an update on that.
Yes.
We may also have some DQS waiver requests from districts that would be for the board to approve. So we'll get into that if there are waiver requests that have been made that would then come before the board. Anything else to go on the list? Certainly if things come up, let me know. All right.
I think we'll have 4. I think it might be 4, as many as 4 schools for approval in October.
Great. Oh, thank you for saying that. Maureen, have we started looking into schools to host for November? Okay, possibly Slate Valley. And it will be in person. Similar format where, we'll plan to meet early, have a tour, meet for lunch, have an afternoon meeting. So it will, again, be an all-day affair, and it will be
November. Wait, is it October? You're talking about the October
I'm talking
meeting or
about the October meeting. October, it will be the 15th. So just know that we'll be in person. Slate Valley is
south.
Yeah, somewhere over by Rutland.
Fairhaven.
South of Rutland, isn't it?
So,
My apologies.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for the October meeting? Okay. This brings us back to public to be heard. We may have lost our audience. Is there anyone online who wishes to raise their hand? I'm not seeing anyone, so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, stand in adjournment. Thank you all.
Baco Chiron, the JV